Under the circumstances, I think it best that your service should end.
As you wish, Miss Fairchild.
She inherited a manor, falling quietly into ruin. The steward had kept it alive at a cost she did not yet understand, and before she learned the truth, she dismissed him. This is The Empty Manor, a Regency romance audiobook. Let the story begin. Gloucestershire, England, April 1816. The Inheritance. Miss Marianne Fairchild had come to Hawthorn Manor expecting that she would have to sell it. She anticipated inconvenience, expense, and a great many disagreeable decisions. She did not expect the house itself to make her hesitate. Her carriage had climbed for nearly a mile between dripping hedgerows before the road curved through an avenue of ancient lime trees. There, beyond a pair of leaning stone pillars, Hawthorn Manor appeared against the pale April sky. It was larger than Marianne had imagined, and considerably more neglected. The central house was built of warm golden stone, 3 stories high, with tall sash windows and a broad flight of entrance steps. An older wing stretched westward, its gables darkened by age and its narrow windows shuttered. 6 chimneys rose above the slate roof, though smoke issued from only one. Guttering hung loose beneath the eastern eaves. Ivy covered 2 windows, grass grew between the stones of the carriage sweep, and the yews bordering the drive had lost all memory of shape. Marianne leaned closer to the window.
Stop here, please.
The coachman drew the horses to a halt.
Is anything wrong, Miss Fairchild?
No, I should merely like to look.
She lowered the carriage window. The morning air carried the scent of wet earth and leaves. Somewhere beyond the house, a rook called. No dog barked from the stable yard, and no servant hurried down the steps. Hawthorn stood in silence. On Marianne's lap lay the solicitor's letter, folded and refolded until the paper had softened at the creases. By the terms of the late Mr. Theodore Hawthorn's will, Hawthorn Manor, together with its lands and tenancies, had passed absolutely to his grandniece, Miss Marianne Fairchild. Great-uncle Theodore had been her mother's uncle. He had never married and had no children. Marianne's elder brother Charles had inherited their father's modest estate 2 years earlier and now had a wife, 2 young sons, and responsibilities enough of his own. Mr. Hawthorn had therefore left Hawthorn Manor to Marianne personally. The solicitor had explained the decision.
Your brother already possesses a home and an inheritance. Mr. Hawthorn wished this estate to belong to you.
The decision was generous, mysterious, and deeply inconvenient. Marianne knew how to manage a household. During the long years of her father's illness, she had settled accounts, directed servants, and stretched a reduced income without allowing the house to fall into disorder. Those years also explained why she remained unmarried at 26. 2 respectable gentlemen had proposed, and she had declined them both. Her father had never asked her to stay. She had remained because she loved him, and she did not regret it. After his death, she had continued living with Charles and his family. She was loved and wanted, but it was Charles's house now, and his wife was its mistress. For the first time in Marianne's life, something substantial belonged entirely to her. Hawthorn Manor was hers. The solicitor had also warned that Hawthorn's income had declined, and essential repairs had been postponed. Marianne had no fortune with which to rescue a failing property. Charles had offered his advice before she departed.
If the accounts are as poor as Mr. Bell suggests, selling may be the only sensible choice.
Unless Marianne discovered some compelling reason to keep it, Hawthorn Manor would be sold. The carriage moved on. A man appeared at the top of the entrance steps before the horses had fully stopped. He descended without haste, carrying a worn leather memorandum book beneath one arm. He was perhaps 33, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark brown hair brushed back from a strong, thoughtful face. His dark blue coat was well cut, though no longer new, and his brown eyes met hers with a steadiness that was neither bold nor deferential. He reached the carriage as the footman unfolded the step.
Miss Fairchild?
His voice was low and clear.
Mr. Elwood?
Yes, Edward Elwood, the estate steward.
He was not what Marianne had expected. The word steward had called to mind a greying gentleman with spectacles and an ink-stained cuff, not the remarkably handsome man standing before her.
Before you enter the house, I must warn you that the third stone step is loose. Keep to the left, if you please.
It was an odd welcome to one's own estate, but a useful one.
Thank you.
Marianne stepped down. She was not tall, but she carried herself with the quiet assurance of a woman accustomed to being depended upon. Her dove-grey travelling pelisse was practical, yet its simplicity suited her. Beneath her bonnet, chestnut hair was centre-parted and neatly pinned, with one soft tendril against either cheek. She had a warm complexion, finely shaped features, and a gentle mouth made for smiling. Her hazel eyes, bright with gold and green, returned at once to the book beneath his arm.
I hope my arrival has not taken the household by surprise.
Your solicitor warned us 10 days ago. Your own letter arrived yesterday.
I had not known my precise arrangements until then.
We were prepared for you, Miss Fairchild.
His courtesy gave no hint of what he thought of the new owner who had arrived to decide Hawthorn's future. A silver-haired woman waited within the doorway.
Mrs. Harding, the housekeeper. She has served at Hawthorn for 31 years.
Mrs. Harding curtsied. She was small and straight-backed, with sensible black shoes and an expression in which anxiety had been carefully folded beneath good manners.
Welcome to Hawthorn Manor, Miss Fairchild.
Thank you, Mrs. Harding.
Marianne crossed into an entrance hall built for a far grander household than the one that remained. Her footsteps echoed across worn squares of black and cream-coloured stone. Portraits receded into shadow above dark oak panelling, and a solitary fire burned in the great stone hearth, too small to warm so vast a room. Marianne looked about the hall.
Is the household usually so quiet?
Mrs. Harding hesitated.
There are only 4 servants remaining, Miss Fairchild.
Only 4?
There were 22 once.
The answer seemed to echo. Edward looked towards a young footman struggling with Marianne's trunk.
Set that down, Tom. Your wrist is not fit for it. Ask Barnes to help you.
The young man flushed.
Yes, sir.
It was a small exchange, but Marianne noticed the ease with which the instruction was obeyed. Edward did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Mrs. Harding offered to show Marianne to her room, but Marianne shook her head.
I should prefer to see the house first.
Edward conducted the tour, with Mrs. Harding following a few steps behind. The drawing room had been closed for winter, its furniture shrouded and its curtains faded.
Mr. Hawthorn had not used this room for several years,
Mrs. Harding said.
Towards the end, he kept chiefly to the library, his bedchamber, and the small dining parlour.
In the library, a coal fire burned beneath a carved mantelpiece, but a ceiling stain betrayed a leaking roof.
This was his favourite room,
she added softly. At the end of the western passage, they stopped before a pair of tall doors. A brass key remained in the lock, darkened by age.
The West Wing?
Yes.
Why are the shutters closed?
The roof is unsafe in 2 places, and part of the floor near the old nursery has fallen.
How long has it been shut?
7 years.
And no repairs were undertaken?
Estimates were obtained.
But the work was not done.
No.
Through the passage window, Marianne glimpsed the south garden. Gravel paths disappeared beneath moss. Rose canes had tangled themselves into thorny walls, and at the centre stood the top of a stone column almost swallowed by ivy.
What is that?
A sundial.
I can scarcely see it.
No one has tended that garden for some years.
The words were factual, but something in Edward's face suggested that he felt the neglect more keenly than he allowed. They returned to the ground floor and entered the estate office. Mrs. Harding paused at the door.
If you have no further need of me, Miss Fairchild, I should see that your room is prepared and luncheon put back.
Of course. Thank you, Mrs. Harding.
The housekeeper curtsied and withdrew, leaving Marianne alone with Mr. Elwood. The office was entirely different from the rest of the manor. Shelves held account books, tenant agreements, and folded maps. An oak desk stood before a broad window overlooking the home farm, while ink, quills, and neatly tied correspondence occupied every surface. The room was plain, crowded, and alive. Edward took a large ledger from the shelf and placed it upon the desk.
The estate accounts for the previous year.
Marianne removed her gloves.
Let us begin.
For the next hour, Hawthorn Manor became columns of figures. Its income was smaller than Marianne had expected. Several tenants were in arrears, the home farm had lost money for 3 years, and bills from a slater and glazier remained unpaid. Marianne sat straighter with every page.
Mr. Dale owes nearly a year's rent.
His harvest failed, and his youngest son was ill through the winter.
I am sorry to hear it, but Hawthorn cannot survive upon sympathy.
His quiet agreement irritated her more than an excuse might have done.
Why was the west wing roof not repaired when the first estimate was obtained?
Mr. Hawthorn refused the expenditure.
You were his steward. Was it not your responsibility to advise him?
I advised him.
And when he refused?
I arranged temporary repairs.
Which failed.
Eventually.
Marianne rose and walked towards the window. Below, a labourer crossed the yard carrying a broken section of fence. Beyond him stood barns in need of paint and a stable roof patched in 3 different colours of slate. She had arrived prepared to discover that Hawthorn required attention. She had not expected to find an estate sinking beneath years of postponed decisions. Charles's warning returned to her.
Do not fall in love with the place before you have seen the accounts, Marianne. A beautiful house can consume a fortune.
He had been right. Marianne turned back.
Is there sufficient money in the estate accounts to meet the servants' wages this quarter?
Edward paused.
Not at present.
Then how do you intend to pay them?
They will be paid.
The assurance, offered without explanation, did little to reassure her. Hawthorn could not be managed upon promises unsupported by money, and difficult decisions did not become kinder when postponed. She closed the account book.
Mr. Elwood, you have been candid with me, but Hawthorn has declined for 8 years, its bills remain unpaid, and the estate cannot meet the servants' wages.
His expression did not alter.
That is correct.
I must decide whether Hawthorn can be preserved or must be sold. I cannot rely solely upon the judgment of the man whose management is itself in question.
A faint tension appeared in his face, but he said nothing.
I intend to ask my solicitor to appoint an independent land agent to examine the property and its accounts.
Edward inclined his head.
That is your right.
Marianne drew a careful breath.
Under the circumstances, I think it best that your service should end.
The room became very still. Outside, the labourer dropped the broken fence rail. The crack of wood against stone carried clearly through the window. Edward looked at Marianne for a long moment. She had expected protest, indignation, perhaps an appeal to sentiment. He merely inclined his head.
As you wish, Miss Fairchild.
His dignity made the decision feel harsher than she had intended.
Mr. Bell will arrange whatever salary is due in lieu of notice.
There is no need.
I do not dismiss a man without paying him what he is owed.
For the first time, his composure fractured, though only in his eyes.
Very well.
He gathered 2 letters from the desk, placed them squarely atop a pile of maps, and closed the ledger.
I shall leave the accounts in order. The tenant list is in the second drawer. The keys are labelled except the old brass key to the west wing. Mrs. Harding knows it.
You need not leave this instant.
I think it would be easier for the household if I did.
For the household?
They have known me a long time.
He picked up the worn leather memorandum book he had carried into the house and tucked it beneath his arm. Marianne glanced at it.
Does that belong to the estate?
No. It contains only my own notes and calculations. The official account books are on the shelves.
A foolish discomfort rose in her throat.
Of course.
Edward went to the door, then stopped.
The third entrance step must be repaired before anyone carries a heavy trunk across it. The eastern chimney should not be used if the wind rises. And if it rains tonight, place a basin beneath the ceiling stain in the blue bedchamber.
Even dismissed, he was still caring for the house.
Thank you, Mr. Elwood.
He bowed.
Miss Fairchild.
Marianne remained beside the desk as his footsteps crossed the hall. No one spoke outside. The front door opened. For several seconds, there was only the sound of the wind moving through the lime trees. Then the door closed. A few moments later, Mrs. Harding appeared in the office doorway. Her face had lost the careful neutrality with which she had welcomed Hawthorn's new mistress.
Will you require anything before luncheon, miss?
No, thank you.
The housekeeper did not move.
You may speak plainly, Mrs. Harding.
I do not know that it is my place.
I would rather hear an unwelcome truth than a courteous silence.
Mrs. Harding clasped her hands.
Then forgive me for telling you what Mr. Elwood would not.
A cold uneasiness crept across Marianne's skin. Mrs. Harding glanced towards the door through which Edward had gone.
There was not enough left in the estate account to pay us after Mr. Hawthorn died. Mr. Elwood advanced this quarter's wages from his own pocket.
Chapter 2. An empty house. Hawthorn Manor woke before Marianne did. Not with the ordered bustle of a prosperous country house, but with the uneven sounds of too few people attempting too much. A coal scuttle scraped along the passage. Somewhere below, a door struck its frame and was hurriedly closed. From the courtyard came the ring of a hammer, followed by silence, as though whoever held it had been called away before the second blow. Marianne opened her eyes. Rain tapped against the window. Beside the hearth, a small fire had sunk to embers, and a china basin stood beneath the stain on the ceiling. 3 drops of water had collected in it. Mr. Elwood's warning had already proved useful. Marianne did not welcome the reminder. Marianne had brought no personal maid. She had never kept one of her own at Charles's house, where a housemaid had assisted her when necessary, and she had expected this visit to Hawthorn to be brief. Mrs. Harding had offered her help the previous evening, but Marianne could not bring herself to summon the housekeeper merely to fasten a gown when 4 servants were already doing the work of 22. She dressed without ringing and found Mrs. Harding arranging breakfast in the small parlour.
Good morning, Miss Fairchild.
Good morning. You need not wait upon me.
The housekeeper paused.
We have always maintained proper service in this room.
With 4 servants?
Mrs. Harding's expression tightened almost imperceptibly.
With 4 servants.
Marianne took her place at the table.
Who remains?
Cook, Tom, Barnes and myself.
And between you?
We share what must be done.
The simple answer held an entire catalogue of labour. Marianne glanced at the breakfast tray. The meal was modest but carefully arranged, as though Mrs. Harding were determined that Hawthorn's reduced circumstances should not show at table.
There is no need for Tom to wait upon me,
Marianne said.
I can pour my own coffee.
He is helping Barnes remove the loose stone from the entrance steps. They mean to make the way safe until a replacement can be found.
Marianne remembered Edward's warning.
Mr. Elwood knew of it.
He generally knew such things.
Marianne looked down at her untouched coffee. Mrs. Harding's words from the previous afternoon returned with uncomfortable clarity. Edward had not merely promised that the servants would be paid. He had already advanced their wages from his own pocket. She had dismissed him without knowing it. Mr. Elwood had been gone less than a day, yet his absence seemed to occupy more space than his presence had. After breakfast, Marianne asked that the remaining servants be brought to the entrance hall. Tom appeared first, his injured wrist still bound. Barnes, the elderly groom who now tended the horses, yard and grounds almost single-handedly, came in with rain upon his shoulders. Cook arrived last, wiping flour from her hands. 4 servants stood beneath the broad staircase, all that remained of a household once served by 22. Marianne thanked them for remaining through Mr. Hawthorn's final illness and the uncertain weeks that followed.
"We did what was needed, miss,"
Barnes said.
And more than should have been asked of 4 servants.
Marianne replied. No one answered. Tom glanced towards the front door before seeming to remember that Edward would not enter through it. Marianne noticed, but said nothing.
Thank you. I shall not keep you from your duties.
Cook curtsied and returned below stairs. Barnes followed Tom towards the yard, leaving Marianne alone with Mrs. Harding beneath the broad staircase. Gratitude would not lessen their workload, but understanding it might prevent her from adding to it. Marianne opened her notebook.
Will you show me the principal rooms, Mrs. Harding?
Of course, miss.
They began with the drawing room. It was cold enough that her breath nearly showed. Dust covered the mantelpiece, and the Holland covers had yellowed where sunlight reached them. In the music room, plaster had fallen from the cornice. The dining room chimney smoked. 2 bedchambers showed damp upon the outer walls. A north passage window would not close, and 1 cellar step had split down the centre. Marianne wrote everything in a small notebook. By the time they reached the western passage, she had filled 2 pages. The tall doors stood closed, the old brass key resting in the lock.
Mr. Elwood said part of the floor had fallen near the nursery.
Marianne said.
Yes, miss.
Is it safe to enter?
The first rooms are safe. He had the dangerous passage blocked.
Marianne turned the key. The air beyond was colder than the rest of the house. Dust lay undisturbed except for a narrow path leading towards a wooden barrier farther down the corridor. They passed a faded sitting room and a schoolroom with maps still pinned to one wall. A child's wooden horse lay near the hearth, 1 wheel missing.
Who lived here?
Mr. Hawthorn's sister and her family stayed in this wing for several years,
Mrs. Harding said.
That was before your mother married.
My mother knew these rooms?
She spent summers here as a girl.
The abandoned wing altered around Marianne. Her mother had crossed these floors. She might have stood at the schoolroom window watching the rooks above the lime trees, or complained over some lesson at the scarred little desk beside the hearth. Marianne touched the wooden horse. Dust came away upon her glove. She possessed very few things that had belonged to her mother, yet Hawthorn had preserved these small traces of her without anyone intending it. A faint cracking sound came from overhead. Mrs. Harding looked up sharply.
We should go no farther.
Beyond the barrier, daylight showed through a jagged opening in the ceiling. Beneath it stood a bucket, folded tarred canvas, and a timber brace.
Who placed those?
Mr. Elwood. Barnes helped him last autumn.
He knew the roof was failing.
He knew nearly everything that was failing.
The answer carried no accusation. That made its implication more difficult to ignore. They returned to the drawing room before noon.
I want this room opened,
Marianne said.
Today?
Yes. The house requires 1 room in which a person may sit without feeling she has entered a mausoleum.
Something almost resembling amusement touched the housekeeper's face. Tom and Mrs. Harding removed the Holland covers. Barnes brought coal.
Lay a proper fire,
Marianne said. He hesitated.
Is there a difficulty?
The coal account is overdue,
Mrs. Harding said. Marianne looked at the empty grate.
How much remains?
Enough for perhaps 3 weeks if the weather improves.
And if it does not?
We shall manage.
It was the answer everyone at Hawthorn gave when there was no good answer.
Light it today,
Marianne said.
we shall reconsider the other fires.
Within half an hour, flames climbed through the grate. The room did not become beautiful, but it began to suggest what it might become. Pale green emerged beneath the grime upon the curtains, and the uncovered chairs seemed to gather closer to the hearth. Marianne opened her notebook. Loose entrance step. North passage window. Library roof, cellar stair, west wing roof, stable roof, drainage, fencing. The list continued. A carpenter from the village arrived that afternoon. Edward had summoned him before leaving. He examined the step, the window, the cellar stair, and the library roof. When he returned, plaster dust silvered his shoulders.
"The library can be made weather-tight for a time,"
he said.
"The west wing is another matter."
Can it be repaired?
"Anything can be repaired, miss."
The words gave her hope for precisely 1 second.
At what cost?
He named a sum. Marianne looked at him, certain she had misheard.
That is for the entire wing.
"For the worst of the roof, not the floors beneath it."
The smaller repairs followed, each amount manageable alone, ruinous together. Marianne asked him to put the figures in writing and to begin only with the loose step and whatever temporary work would keep the rain from the library.
"The north passage window?"
he asked.
Board it until next month.
"And the cellar stair?"
Place a barrier before it.
The decisions tasted of failure. She had begun the morning determined to put Hawthorn in order. Instead, she was deciding which injuries could be allowed to worsen. She understood now why the house remained full of buckets, braces, and temporary repairs. Someone had been fighting a retreat for years. After he left, Marianne returned to the estate office. She added the cost of the urgent work. She subtracted the next quarter's wages, seed for the home farm, horse feed, household provisions, and the oldest unpaid bills. The remaining figure was so small that she calculated it twice. She had managed reduced incomes before. She knew how to substitute, postpone, economize, and persuade £1 to perform the work of 2. But thrift could preserve a household only when there was something left to stretch. Hawthorn did not require economy. It required money. Her own modest income could replace a window or repair a step. It could not restore a roof large enough to shelter half a manor. She drew a line down a fresh page. At the top of one column she wrote, "Immediate," then listed the entrance step, the library leak, the cellar stair, and the broken window. At the top of the second, she wrote, "Necessary," the west wing roof, the stable roof, the chimney, drainage, fencing, tenant cottages. Everything was necessary. Only a few things were possible. Near 4 o'clock, Marianne escaped into the south garden. The rain had stopped, though water clung to every branch. At the garden's centre, ivy covered the sundial's stone pedestal, and dead rose canes twisted around the metal plate. Marianne pulled away one vine, then another. Damp leaves stained her gloves. A few engraved words appeared around the rim. She could make out one word: time. Beneath a crust of lichen, she uncovered another: care. The rest remained hidden. She tugged at a thicker stem. It resisted, rooted deep among the thorns. Mrs. Harding approached, carrying Marianne's shawl.
"You will take cold, miss."
I thought I might clear the sundial.
"It would take Barnes a full day."
Then I shall ask him.
"He is repairing the paddock fence tomorrow. After that, the lower field gate has failed."
Marianne looked down at the half-revealed inscription.
I cannot order one thing without taking someone from something more urgent.
"That has been the difficulty for some time,"
Mrs. Harding said. Marianne looked back towards the house. Mr. Elwood might have explained that. Yet whenever she had questioned him, he had answered only what was asked, and nothing more. She could not decide whether his silence had been restraint, pride, or indifference. Mrs. Harding settled the shawl around Marianne's shoulders.
Mr. Elwood could often prevent matters from worsening. He could not always persuade Mr. Hawthorn to put them right.
Marianne glanced at her.
Then why did he not say so?
He would not speak against your great uncle.
The manor stood beyond them, its warm stone glowing faintly beneath the lowering sky. From this distance, the broken guttering and cracked windows were less visible. A house might conceal its injuries as successfully as a person. That evening, Marianne sat alone in the reopened drawing room. The single fire had begun to settle. She resisted the impulse to add another piece of coal. At last, she carried a lamp to the estate office. She intended to find the original estimate for the west wing roof. On the third shelf stood a row of narrow estate maintenance ledgers, bound in worn brown leather, each marked with a year. She selected the earliest and opened it upon the desk. Edward's handwriting filled the pages. Every inspection had been dated. Every defect had been recorded. Beside each problem appeared an estimate, a recommended action, and the date upon which Mr. Hawthorn had been informed. Marianne turned a page.
West wing guttering showing signs of failure. Immediate replacement advised.
Beneath it, in a weaker hand,
Unnecessary.
another page.
Timber above old nursery softened by water. Repair cannot safely be delayed another winter.
Theodore Hawthorn's reply appeared beside it.
The wing is unused.
Marianne opened the next ledger, then the next. Roof, chimney, drainage, farm buildings, tenant cottages. Year after year, Edward had recorded every warning. Each recommendation had been carefully costed. Each refusal had been entered in Theodore Hawthorn's own hand. Marianne sat motionless beneath the lamplight. She had dismissed Mr. Elwood for failing to see what must be done. The ledgers proved that he had seen all of it. Chapter 3. The Cost of Loyalty. Marianne remained in the estate office long after the final page should have satisfied her. It did not. The ledgers had already proved that Mr. Elwood had warned Mr. Hawthorn again and again. Roofs, chimneys, drains, cottages, farm buildings. Each problem had been recorded before it became a disaster. Each estimate had been obtained. Each refusal had been preserved in her great-uncle's own hand. The question was no longer whether Mr. Elwood had understood Hawthorn's decline. It was how he had kept the estate from collapsing sooner. She closed one ledger and opened another. This volume was not devoted to repairs. It contained smaller entries, written in the same orderly hand. Payments to tradesmen, advances to tenants, purchases for the home farm, and sums transferred between accounts when rents arrived late. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then Marianne noticed a notation beside the repair of a cottage roof.
Advanced by E. Elwood.
She read the entry twice. The cottage belonged to a widow named Mrs. Pike. A winter storm had torn away part of the thatch. The estate account had contained insufficient funds, and Mr. Hawthorn had refused immediate payment. Mr. Elwood had paid the thatcher himself. Marianne turned the page.
Seed purchased for Dale tenancy after failed harvest. Advanced by E. Elwood.
Another page.
Doctor's fee for child at Mill Cottage. Advanced by E. Elwood. Timber for temporary brace in West Wing Passage. Advanced by E. Elwood.
The entries were never large enough to rescue Hawthorn. They were the sums required to keep a family dry, a field planted, or a dangerous wall standing for another season. Dozens of small emergencies, dozens of decisions made when no one else would make them. Marianne drew a sheet of paper towards her and began adding the figures. By the time the clock in the hall struck midnight, the total had become substantial. Not a fortune, enough to diminish one. She searched for Mr. Elwood's salary payments. For years, the payments appeared regularly. Then they became less orderly. During the final 18 months, several quarters had been marked as deferred. No later entry showed that they had been paid. Marianne sat back. Mr. Elwood had not merely advanced the servants' wages after her great-uncle's death. He had been lending money to Hawthorn for years while allowing his own salary to go unpaid. The office seemed colder, though the candle beside her had burned nearly to its socket. She remembered his quiet reply when she had said that Mr. Bell would arrange whatever salary was due in lieu of notice.
There is no need.
She had mistaken pride for indifference, or perhaps dignity for guilt. A knock sounded softly at the door. Mrs. Harding entered carrying a fresh candle. She placed it beside the one that had burned nearly to its socket.
I saw the light beneath the door, miss.
I did not mean to keep anyone awake.
You have not. Cook has been asleep these 2 hours, and Tom would sleep through the roof falling.
Marianne looked at the open ledgers.
Did you know he had been advancing money to the estate?
Mrs. Harding followed her gaze but did not answer at once. Marianne touched one of the entries.
That he paid for Mrs. Pike's roof, found seed for Mr. Dale, and had not received his full salary for some time.
I knew he paid our wages, and that he helped Mrs. Pike after the storm. I did not know there were so many other entries.
What else did you know?
Only what could not be hidden in a household with so few people, miss. Tradesmen came to him, tenants thanked him, but Mr. Elwood never discussed his private affairs with me.
Marianne looked down at the open ledgers.
I dismissed him before I understood what he had done.
The admission settled heavily between them.
He was never willing to make a parade of what he had done.
Marianne glanced at the entries bearing his initials.
Why did he remain at Hawthorn when he might have gone elsewhere?
The housekeeper was silent for a moment.
Mr. Elwood did not grow up at Hawthorn. His father was a gentleman in Worcestershire, though not a wealthy one. Mr. Elwood is the second son.
Marianne looked up.
Then becoming a steward was his own choice?
Yes, miss. He had a head for land and figures and preferred practical work to the church or the army. His elder brother inherited the family property, and Mr. Elwood preferred to earn his own way.
That altered Marianne's understanding of him yet again. She had assumed that Mr. Elwood remained at Hawthorn because he had nowhere else to go. Now she understood that he had stayed despite having other choices.
Was Hawthorn his first position?
No. He served as assistant to an agent in Herefordshire before Mr. Hawthorn engaged him. He came here 8 years ago.
And stayed while the estate declined around him?
He was offered other situations.
Marianne's hand stilled upon the paper.
Better ones?
Mr. Hawthorn once mentioned 2 offers when he was displeased that Mr. Elwood had refused them. One was in Warwickshire, with a larger salary and a house of his own. The other was on an estate near Bath.
Why did he refuse them?
Mrs. Harding's expression became guarded.
He said Hawthorn had been entrusted to him.
By my great-uncle?
Yes, miss.
Something in Mrs. Harding's expression suggested there was more to that trust, but she did not elaborate. Marianne looked again at the total she had calculated.
If he could meet so many emergencies, why did he not undertake the larger repairs himself?
Because no steward could, miss. A cottage roof or a doctor's fee is one thing. The west wing would swallow a gentleman's fortune and remain unfinished.
The correction was gentle, but Marianne felt it. She had been measuring what Mr. Elwood had given against the full needs of Hawthorn, as though generosity became meaningless when it could not perform the impossible.
How much has he lost by remaining here?
I could not say. More than money, perhaps.
Marianne understood something of that answer. For years her own choices had been shaped by what her father needed. She had remained beside him not because she believed she could change what awaited them, but because there was still comfort she could give and work she could do. Mr. Elwood's circumstances were different. Yet she recognized in his loyalty the same quiet determination to remain useful when nothing could be put right at once. The recognition unsettled her. She did not ask what else her great-uncle might have said. She had learned enough for one night to understand how little she had known that afternoon. She closed the ledger.
Tomorrow I shall write to him.
Mrs. Harding glanced towards the window, black with night.
I think that would be wise.
Marianne did not sleep well. By morning, the rain had stopped. Marianne had authorised only the most urgent work, which she would pay for from her own modest funds. Hawthorn's accounts could not bear even these repairs. Hammering began shortly after breakfast as Barnes and the builder set a new stone into the entrance steps. Later, they secured tarred canvas over the damaged section of the library roof. The work was temporary, but it altered the sound of Hawthorn. For the first time since Marianne's arrival, the house echoed with repair rather than neglect. Each blow of the hammer travelled through the entrance hall and along the passages, small, practical, and hopeful. Yet Marianne could not hear it without remembering that Mr. Elwood had arranged the builder's visit before she dismissed him. Even this first improvement had begun with him. She stood in the entrance hall and watched the builder test the stone beneath his boot.
It will hold. Give the mortar the day to set.
Thank you.
Tom had already placed a chair across the step so that no one would tread upon it. Barnes carried the broken stone towards the yard. Marianne returned to the estate office. Mr. Elwood's records waited where she had left them. In daylight, the entries seemed even more sober. No sentiment, no defence. Only dates, figures, and the quiet repetition of his initials wherever the estate had failed to provide what was needed. There was no suggestion that any of the advances had ever been repaid. Marianne ran one finger beneath his initials. He had done these things without expecting gratitude from the tenants, praise from her great-uncle, or even recognition from the next owner. Had she sold Hawthorn without examining the records, she might never have known. She remembered telling Mr. Elwood that she intended to have the entire estate examined by an independent land agent. She had spoken as though another man's judgment were needed to expose what he had failed to see. Instead, it would only have confirmed the warnings he had been making for years. Marianne drew a fresh sheet of paper towards her and attempted to write.
Dear Mr. Elwood.
She stopped.
I owe you an apology.
True, but insufficient.
I acted upon incomplete information.
That sounded like something Mr. Bell might write after misplacing a deed. Marianne set down her pen. An apology composed in comfortable solitude could be made as elegant as one pleased. Mr. Elwood deserved something less polished and more honest. She began again.
Mr. Elwood, I dismissed you upon the belief that Hawthorn's condition reflected years of neglect under your management. I have now examined the maintenance records and the accounts of the sums you advanced personally. I understand that belief was unjust.
She paused. Not entirely unjust, a defensive part of her mind whispered. Mr. Elwood might have explained himself, but he had answered every question she asked. She had simply asked the wrong ones and reached her decision too quickly. She continued.
I ask that you return to Hawthorn so that I may speak to you in person. I cannot repair the wrong by letter, but I hope you will allow me the opportunity to begin.
Marianne signed her name. For several moments she stared at it. Then she folded the sheet and sealed it. Tom was helping cook below stairs. Marianne carried the letter herself to the yard and found Barnes harnessing the bay mare before riding out to inspect the lower field gate.
Mr. Barnes, do you know where Mr. Elwood is staying?
The groom's hands paused upon the strap.
At the cottage beyond Miller's Wood, miss. It belongs to a cousin of his.
Will you take this to him?
Barnes looked at the seal, then at Marianne.
Yes, miss.
And ask him to return today, if he is willing.
Something eased in the older man's face.
I'll find him.
Marianne watched him ride beneath the lime trees. The remainder of the morning passed slowly. She attempted to review the farm accounts, but every hoofbeat from the drive drew her attention to the window. Once she heard a horse approach and rose so quickly that her chair struck the wall. It was only a tenant bringing a message for Barnes. Marianne sat down again, annoyed by the force of her disappointment. At luncheon, she ate scarcely anything. By 3 o'clock, the library roof had been covered, the entrance step had begun to set, and Barnes had not returned. Marianne turned a page without knowing what it contained. Respect had begun as evidence in a ledger. Now it had become something less comfortable. She wanted Mr. Elwood to return because Hawthorn needed him. She wanted Edward to return because she had wronged him. The two desires were not quite the same. Barnes returned near dusk with Marianne's letter still in his hand.
Mr. Elwood was not at the cottage, miss.
Marianne rose.
Perhaps he has gone into the village.
Barnes hesitated.
I asked at the inn. He took the morning coach for Gloucester, carrying a valise.
The unopened letter seemed suddenly heavier in Marianne's hand. Mr. Elwood was gone. Chapter 4. The Return. By 7 the next morning, Marianne's apology was travelling towards Gloucester without any certainty that it would find the man for whom it had been written. Barnes had left before breakfast, carrying the sealed letter inside his coat and instructions to inquire at the coaching inn where the Gloucester coach ended its journey. If Mr. Elwood had already continued into Worcestershire, the letter was to be forwarded after him. Marianne had supplied money for the journey and whatever fees might be required. It felt like placing her hope into someone else's pocket. The morning passed beneath a clear sky. Sunlight entered the drawing room for the first time since her arrival and exposed every faded curtain, every threadbare place in the carpet, and every pale rectangle where a picture had once hung. Marianne attempted to answer a letter from her brother Charles. She wrote that Hawthorn was larger than expected. She wrote that the accounts were complicated. She did not write that she had dismissed the one man who understood them and then sent an apology racing after him to Gloucester. At noon, the builder came to examine the library roof again. He asked about slates, guttering, rotten battens, and the extent of the intended repair. Marianne could answer none of it with confidence. Every question seemed to produce 3 more. Would Marianne purchase new slates or attempt to repair with what remained? Did she wish the damaged gutter replaced or merely secured? Should the rotten battens be removed now, although doing so might expose more of the roof?
Which course would you advise?
She asked. The builder pushed his cap back.
That depends how long you mean to keep the house, miss. If it need only last through the summer, the canvas may serve. If it must face another winter, the slates and battens ought to be replaced.
It was the question Hawthorn placed before Marianne at every turn. Was she preserving a home or merely delaying its sale? She authorised no further work. The temporary covering was sound for the present, and she would not commit more of her limited funds until she knew what future she was repairing the house for. Barnes returned shortly after 3 o'clock. Marianne met him in the entrance hall before he had removed his coat.
Did you find Mr. Elwood?
No, miss. He had taken a room at the Bell and Crown, but he was out when I arrived.
Her hope faltered.
You left the letter?
With the innkeeper. He promised to place it in Mr. Elwood's hand as soon as he returned.
Did he know where Mr. Elwood had gone?
To arrange his place on the next coach, he believed.
Into Worcestershire?
Barnes nodded.
There was nothing more I could do, miss.
No, thank you, Barnes.
By 4 o'clock, clouds had begun to gather over the western fields, and there had been no answer. Marianne went to the estate office, where Mr. Elwood's chair stood neatly beneath the desk. She had not moved it since reading the ledgers. His official books remained upon the shelves, but the worn leather memorandum book was gone with him. She had come to recognise the difference. The estate records contained what had happened to Hawthorn. His private book appeared to contain what might still be done. A horse sounded upon the drive. Marianne rose so quickly that the pen slipped from her hand. She crossed the entrance hall as Tom opened the front door. A dark horse stood at the foot of the steps, flecked with foam from the road. The rider dismounted and turned towards the house, Mr. Elwood. Road dust marked his boots and the hem of his dark blue coat. His valise was strapped behind the saddle. In one gloved hand, he held Marianne's letter. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Tom stepped forward to take the reins, and the ordinary movement broke the stillness.
Mr. Elwood.
Miss Fairchild.
His voice was as calm as ever, but he looked tired. He had travelled away from Hawthorn, received her letter, and turned back again.
You found my letter?
It found me. The innkeeper gave it to me when I returned from arranging a place on tomorrow's coach.
Into Worcestershire?
Yes.
The knowledge struck more sharply than Marianne expected. He had intended to leave Hawthorn behind.
I am grateful you came back.
Mr. Elwood glanced at the open door and the servants within hearing.
Perhaps we might speak in the office.
Of course.
He removed his gloves as they crossed the hall. Mrs. Harding appeared briefly at the far end of the passage, stopped, and then continued towards the kitchen with suspicious composure. Mr. Elwood entered the estate office but did not take his former chair. He stood beside the desk, Marianne's letter still in his hand. She had rehearsed her apology while he was absent. Every version deserted her now.
I meant what I wrote.
I believed you did.
I judged your stewardship before I understood the conditions under which you had worked. I mistook the consequences of my great-uncle's refusals for failures of your own.
Mr. Elwood said nothing. Marianne forced herself to continue.
I also spoke as though an independent agent were needed to discover what you had failed to see. The records prove that you saw every danger before I did and tried repeatedly to prevent it.
You had known Hawthorn for less than a day when you dismissed me.
That explains my ignorance. It does not excuse my certainty.
Something shifted in his expression, though it was not quite a smile.
No, it does not,
he said. The answer might have wounded her from another man. From Mr. Elwood, it felt like respect. He would not pretend that she had done no wrong merely to spare her discomfort.
I am sorry, not because Hawthorn has become more difficult without you, although it has, but because I treated you unjustly.
Marianne said. He looked down at the letter.
You were mistaken, and your words were hard. But you have not attempted to defend either.
I do not know how.
That is generally the beginning of an honest apology.
Marianne waited. Mr. Elwood folded the letter along its existing crease.
I accept it, Miss Fairchild. I have no wish to make you suffer for acknowledging what happened.
Relief loosened something inside her, but it did not restore the distance between them.
Will you return as steward?
His gaze moved to the shelves, the desk, and the chair he had not yet taken.
For how long?
Until the estate has been fully assessed, and I have decided whether it can be kept.
You still intend to employ an independent land agent?
Yes.
A shadow of the old reserve returned to his face.
Not to judge your conduct, to judge Hawthorn's prospects. I need to know the true value of the land, the likely income, and the cost of preserving what can be preserved. I would ask you to work with him, not submit to him.
Mr. Elwood considered this.
That is sensible.
I flatter myself that I occasionally am.
This time the change in his expression was unmistakable. Brief, but real. Marianne placed both hands upon the back of the empty chair.
There must also be an understanding about your salary. The arrears remain a debt upon the estate. I cannot discharge them immediately, but I will not permit the debt to increase.
Hawthorn cannot presently meet another quarter.
Then I shall meet the next quarter from my own income.
Miss Fairchild, your private income cannot be expected to support Hawthorn.
I know precisely what I can afford.
And precisely how little will remain if you continue.
Almost precisely.
His mouth moved as though he had suppressed another objection.
I will accept my salary from this day forward. The arrears may wait until the estate's future is settled,
he said.
Agreed.
And I return as steward, not as an object of gratitude.
Marianne inclined her head.
As steward?
Only then did he pull out the chair and sit. The simple action changed the room. Mr. Elwood set Marianne's letter beside the ledger and drew his worn memorandum book from inside his coat. He opened it to a page filled with figures, crossed out 2 lines, and looked up.
What has been done in my absence?
The entrance step has been replaced. Tarred canvas has been secured over the damaged library roof.
And what did the builder recommend next?
He could offer no answer until I decided whether I meant to preserve the house for another winter.
That was prudent.
The approval warmed her more than it should have. Marianne brought him the notebook in which she had divided the repairs into immediate and necessary. He read both columns.
Everything in the second column will eventually become part of the first.
I had reached that cheerful conclusion.
We require a third column.
For impossible?
For possible now.
He drew a line upon the page. Marianne sat opposite him.
The estate account contains almost nothing.
The estate possesses more than money.
He turned several pages in his memorandum book.
The old laundry behind the kitchen court has not been used for 9 years. One wall has shifted beyond economical repair, but most of its roof slates are sound. They can be removed and used above the library.
Would we not merely be moving the ruin from one building to another?
The laundry cannot be saved without rebuilding it. The library can. We would be taking good material from a lost building to preserve a useful one.
How much would that save?
He named a figure less than half the builder's estimate for new slates.
And the guttering?
There is a section of lead guttering in the stable loft, left from an earlier repair. It is not enough to replace the entire run, but enough to carry water beyond the damaged wall until autumn.
Marianne looked at him.
Then why was this not done before?
I proposed it last autumn. Your great-uncle would not permit the laundry roof to be stripped, and the estate could not meet the cost of the labour.
And now?
Mr. Elwood met her gaze.
Now the decision is yours.
Then we shall use the slates.
Mr. Elwood rose.
Shall we send for the builder?
Tom was dispatched to the village, and the builder returned within half an hour. Mr. Elwood explained the condition of the laundry roof, the available lead, and the safest way to remove the slates. Marianne asked the cost of the additional labour and required the builder to state it plainly. When he did, she looked at Mr. Elwood.
Can the estate bear it?
Not today.
Then I can.
He did not argue before the builder. Work began within the hour. Barnes and Tom helped carry the first slates across the kitchen court. Barnes looked from the men upon the ladder to Mr. Elwood standing below and allowed himself one satisfied nod. The tarred canvas was removed. The builder replaced 2 rotten battens and laid the salvaged slates in careful rows. By sunset, the worst of the opening had disappeared beneath dark grey stone. It was not a new roof. It was not even a complete repair. But when Mr. Elwood poured a bucket of water above the mended section, none appeared upon the library ceiling. Marianne stood beside him beneath the eaves.
One dry patch,
she said.
One less wet one.
That is a very steward-like measure of triumph.
It prevents disappointment.
I prefer to think it permits accuracy.
He glanced at her.
Then we agree.
The words remained with her as they returned to the office. For the next hour, they worked through the list. The cellar stair could be made safe with timber already stored in the barn. The north passage window required new cord and putty, not replacement. The stable roof must wait, but its loose slates could be secured before the next storm. Each decision was small, but together they made Hawthorn's recovery seem possible. They might have continued without noticing the hour had Mrs. Harding not entered carrying a large tray.
Cook says a leaking roof is no reason to let a good chicken pie spoil,
she announced. She set down a chicken pie fragrant with thyme, a dish of buttered carrots, fresh bread, and 2 bowls of baked apples with cream. Marianne realized at once how hungry she was. There was no room for ceremony. They moved the ledgers aside, spread 2 napkins across the corner of the desk, and ate among lists of broken gutters and unpaid accounts. The pie was hot and richly seasoned, the pastry crisp beneath Marianne's fork. For several minutes, neither of them spoke except to pass the bread or offer the other more carrots. The silence no longer felt guarded. It was the companionable quiet of two people occupied by the same work.
Mrs. Harding appears determined to restore Hawthorn by feeding us,
Marianne said.
It may be the soundest plan yet proposed.
Mr. Elwood replied. Marianne smiled and returned to her pie. Night had settled beyond the windows when Mr. Elwood closed the final ledger.
There is one other matter.
Marianne set down her pen. Mr. Elwood crossed to the cabinet beside the fireplace and opened its narrow upper drawer. From beneath a folded estate map, he withdrew a small iron key. It was darker and narrower than the brass key Marianne had used to enter the west wing.
What does it open?
A room above the old schoolroom. It can be reached by the narrow stair from the north gallery without crossing the damaged passage.
Mrs. Harding did not mention it.
She was instructed not to.
By my great-uncle?
Yes.
Mr. Elwood placed the key upon the desk between them. Marianne looked from it to his face.
What is in the room?
His fingers remained beside the key for a moment before he drew his hand away.
There is one part of the house you have not yet seen.
Chapter 5. What Hawthorn Kept. The iron key lay upon the desk between them. Marianne looked towards the dark windows.
You mean to show me tonight?
Tomorrow, by daylight. The stair is narrow, and the room has been unused for many years.
Mr. Elwood said.
You have entered it.
Twice each year to inspect the roof, shutters and chimney.
And no one else?
Not since your great-uncle gave me the key.
Marianne touched the iron bow with one finger. It was cold despite the warmth of the room.
Why did Mrs. Harding never mention it?
Your great-uncle asked that the room remain undisturbed.
And why show it to me now?
Because it is yours. Before now, there was no opportunity.
The answer should have irritated her. Instead, Marianne closed her fingers around the key.
I shall meet you in the north gallery after breakfast.
Mr. Elwood inclined his head. When he had gone, Marianne carried the key upstairs with her. She placed it upon the table beside her bed, where the candlelight caught upon its worn edges. It was only a key, no different in purpose from the dozens that opened cupboards, cellars, and long unused doors throughout Hawthorn. Yet this one had been kept apart. She slept badly. The following morning was pale and cold, with mist lying low across the south lawn. Mr. Elwood had ridden over from the cottage beyond Miller's Wood shortly after breakfast, and was waiting in the north gallery beside a narrow panelled door she had previously mistaken for part of the wall. He carried a lamp, although daylight entered through the long windows.
The stair has no window,
he explained. Mr. Elwood lifted the latch. The narrow door opened upon a cramped flight of steps. He went first, holding the lamp high. The stone treads curved within the thickness of the old wall, worn shallow at their centres by generations of feet. At the top stood another door. Marianne inserted the iron key. It resisted, then turned with a heavy click. Mr. Elwood stepped back.
The room is yours, Miss Fairchild.
She pushed the door inward. The chamber beneath the eaves was smaller than she had expected. Dust sheets covered 2 chairs and a narrow daybed. A writing desk stood beneath the window, its sloping lid closed. Shelves filled one wall, holding books, a work basket, and several portfolios tied with faded ribbon. The paper upon the walls had once been blue. Small painted vines climbed between pale flowers, their colours softened by time but not destroyed by it. Nothing in the room was grand. Nothing had been abandoned carelessly. The curtains had been folded across the window seat rather than left to rot upon their rings. The hearth had been swept. Pieces of cedar lay inside the drawers of a tall chest, and the dust sheets were grey but intact. Mr. Elwood crossed to the window and released the shutter. Morning entered the room. The south garden appeared below them, its paths blurred by weeds and mist. At its centre stood the sundial, almost hidden beneath ivy and dead rose canes. Marianne moved towards the desk. A small porcelain dish rested upon it. Blue cornflowers had been painted around the rim. Beside it lay a penknife, a brass seal, and a blotting book embroidered with the initials E.H. Eleanor Hawthorn, her mother's name before she became Mrs. Fairchild. Marianne touched the faded thread.
My mother used this room.
Yes.
Did my great-uncle speak of her?
Often enough that I knew this as Miss Eleanor's room.
The simple answer brought her mother closer than any portrait could have done. She had been a girl here before she became anyone's wife or mother. She had possessed a room, a desk, and shelves filled according to her own tastes. Mr. Elwood moved towards the door.
I shall wait in the north gallery.
Marianne looked down at the embroidered initials.
Thank you.
He set the lamp upon the table and left the door ajar behind him. Marianne stood alone in the room her mother had once called her own. She lifted the sloping lid of the desk. Inside lay packets of paper, sticks of sealing wax, 2 dried sprigs of lavender, and a bundle of letters tied with narrow blue ribbon. A sketchbook rested beneath them. She opened the sketchbook first. Her mother's name appeared on the flyleaf in a rounded hand Marianne recognized from the few letters preserved at Charles's house. The pages held watercolours of Hawthorn. The lime avenue glowed green beneath a summer sky. The west lawn was covered with snow. The kitchen court bustled with servants and baskets. One painting showed the south garden before neglect had swallowed its design. Roses climbed orderly arches, gravel paths met in a circle, and the stone sundial stood clear at the centre. Marianne returned to the desk and untied the letters. The first several were invitations, notes about books, and brief household messages written during her mother's visits. Then Marianne found a longer letter bearing the address of her parents' home. The paper had softened at its folds. She read silently until her own name stopped her. My dear uncle, Marianne is strong, solemn, and determined to keep us all in proper order. Her father insists she smiled at him yesterday, though I believe it was merely the result of wind. Marianne pressed her lips together. She continued, When she is old enough, I hope to bring her to Hawthorn. I want her to know the lime avenue, the rookery, and the sundial in the south garden. Hawthorn was the first place where I understood that a home is not made dear by possession alone, but by the care one gives it. I hope she may feel that truth here one day. Marianne lowered the letter. Her mother had intended to bring her to Hawthorn. Perhaps illness, distance, or the ordinary delays of family life had prevented it. Marianne could not remember ever crossing the threshold. By the time she was old enough to retain such memories, Hawthorn had become only a name occasionally mentioned. Yet her mother had imagined her here, not as an owner, but as a child being shown the places she had loved. Marianne folded the letter along its old creases and returned it to the bundle. Then she carried the sketchbook into the north gallery. Mr. Elwood stood beside one of the long windows, looking out across the lawn. He turned as she approached, but did not ask what she had found. Marianne opened the book to the painting of the south garden.
Was the garden truly like this?
I never saw it so. The beds had already begun to fail when I came to Hawthorn,
Mr. Elwood said.
My mother remembered it full of life.
She painted it that way.
There was no false comfort in his answer. He did not pretend the garden remained unchanged merely because Marianne wished it had. She turned another page. A young man stood beside the sundial, one hand resting upon its stone rim. His features were only lightly suggested, but the proud angle of the head was unmistakable.
My great-uncle.
I believe so.
He could not have been more than 25. Marianne had known her great-uncle only as an old man whose letters were infrequent and increasingly unsteady. Her mother had known him young in a summer garden. The discovery disturbed something fixed in Marianne's mind. Hawthorn had not always been old. Neither had its master. Marianne turned another page. The watercolour showed the sundial at the centre of the south garden, its stone face clear above beds of roses. Beneath the painting, her mother had written 5 words. Marianne read them aloud.
Time reveals what care preserves.
Mr. Elwood looked from the painted garden to the neglected one beyond the gallery windows.
Your mother appears to have understood Hawthorn.
Better than I do,
You have been here 5 days.
and have spent most of them discovering how much I failed to understand in the first.
That is still an improvement.
Marianne looked at him.
Was that intended as encouragement?
It was intended as accuracy.
A smile touched her before she could prevent it. By noon, Mrs. Harding had been told that the room was to be put in order. Her surprise lasted only a moment before practical concerns overcame it.
The curtains must be beaten, the chimney tested, and every linen examined. Tom may be spared from the yard for half an hour, but no longer.
Then I shall begin with the books.
Marianne replied. Mrs. Harding looked as though mistresses of Hawthorn had not traditionally dusted their own shelves. Mr. Elwood spared them both by asking whether cook possessed any lavender suitable for the drawers. The room slowly changed. Tom removed the remaining dust sheets, while Mrs. Harding examined the curtains and linens. One chair showed little damage beyond faded upholstery, and the narrow daybed still smelled faintly of cedar. Marianne wiped the dust from the spines of her mother's books. There were volumes of poetry, histories, gardening books, and a much-used copy of Shakespeare with pressed violets between 2 pages. Mr. Elwood opened the chimney register and examined the hearth. A loose corner of paper near the ceiling caught his attention. He stepped onto the window seat and touched the plaster above it.
Damp?
Marianne asked.
Old staining. The wall is dry.
You are certain?
He looked down at her.
I have learned not to offer you certainty without evidence.
She deserved the reminder, but there was warmth beneath it now. Mr. Elwood descended from the window seat.
The gutter above this room was cleared in autumn. The roof should hold until it can be properly repaired.
Marianne looked around the chamber. Pale daylight rested upon the writing desk, the faded blue walls, and the books her mother had once chosen for herself.
Could the room be made habitable?
With cleaning, a fire and care.
Mr. Elwood said. The last word seemed to remain in the air between them.
Then I should like it done.
Mrs. Harding glanced at her.
For occasional use, miss?
Marianne looked towards the open window and the garden beyond it.
For whatever use Hawthorn permits.
It was not a promise to remain. She could not yet make one. But it was no longer the language of a woman preparing only to leave. The window remained open while the mist lifted from the garden. Fresh linen replaced the covering upon the daybed. A small fire drew cleanly in the grate. Marianne returned the sketchbook to the desk beside the bundle of letters and set the porcelain dish, penknife, and brass seal neatly around them. By late afternoon, the chamber no longer felt preserved against life. It felt ready for it. Mr. Elwood waited in the north gallery while Marianne closed the panelled door behind her.
Has seeing the room altered your decision about Hawthorn?
Mr. Elwood asked.
It has altered the question.
In what way?
I had been asking whether the estate was worth saving.
And now?
Marianne looked through the gallery window towards the sundial, where one patch of stone showed through the weeds from her earlier efforts.
Now I must also ask what would be lost if I did not try.
Tom approached along the gallery, carrying a letter upon a salver.
For you, miss. From Mr. Bell.
Marianne broke the seal. The solicitor's message was brief. An experienced land agent named Mr. Sayer had agreed to inspect Hawthorn and assess its prospects. He would arrive in 2 days. A second paragraph followed. Marianne read it twice.
What is it?
Mr. Elwood asked. She handed him the letter. Mr. Bell had received an inquiry from a neighbouring landowner. If Marianne chose to sell, a purchaser might already be waiting. Mr. Elwood returned the page without comment. Above them, the first fire in her mother's room burned after years of cold. In 2 days, a stranger would begin deciding what Hawthorn was worth. Marianne was no longer certain that a stranger's figures could measure what she had begun to understand. Chapter 6. The Estate. Mr. Elwood arrived shortly after 8 the following morning to find Marianne waiting in the entrance hall with her bonnet tied and her gloves already on. He stopped just inside the door.
You are prepared to go out.
I am.
The ground will be wet.
So Mrs. Harding has warned me 3 times.
His gaze dropped to the sturdy half-boots beneath the hem of her walking dress.
She appears to have been obeyed.
Only because she threatened to send Barnes after us with a second pair.
A brief change touched his face, but the smile did not quite arrive. Marianne held out Mr. Bell's letter.
Mr. Sayer comes tomorrow. Before he begins reducing Hawthorn to acreage, rents and repair estimates, I should like to see the estate for myself.
Mr. Elwood read the letter once more, though he already knew its contents.
And Mr. Bell's other news?
I shall consider nothing until the inspection is complete.
That is prudent.
I am becoming alarmingly accustomed to hearing you say so.
This time, the smile appeared. He returned the letter.
Then we should begin with the lower farms. The road to the village is passable, but the path beyond Mill Cottage will be muddy.
I have been promised mud.
You may find Hawthorn generous in that respect.
They left by the east door and followed the track beyond the kitchen court. The morning was cool and bright after several days of rain. Water still shone in the wagon ruts, and the hedgerows carried the first green haze of spring. Mr. Elwood walked with his memorandum book tucked beneath one arm. Marianne had expected him to begin explaining the estate at once, but he allowed the land to speak first. The home farm lay beyond a low stone wall. Its barns were sounder than the house, though one roof sagged near the western gable. Cattle moved slowly through the lower pasture, tearing at the new grass. Farther uphill, 2 men worked beside a blocked drainage ditch.
That field should have been planted last week,
Mr. Elwood said.
The ground remains too wet.
Can the ditch be cleared?
Yes, it requires labour more than money.
Then why has it not been done?
The estate men were occupied keeping the road open after the storm. Mr. Dale has 2 sons, but one injured his shoulder and the other is needed with the plough.
Marianne watched one of the men drive a spade into the dark earth.
How many days?
2, perhaps 3, if Barnes can spare the cart.
Then we shall ask Barnes whether he can spare it, and Mr. Dale whether the plan will serve. I should prefer to know whether it is useful to them before I congratulate myself upon it.
Mr. Elwood looked at her. They found Mr. Dale near the farmhouse, repairing a broken hurdle. He was a broad man in his 40s, with an expression that became guarded the moment he saw Marianne approaching beside the steward. Mr. Elwood introduced them. Mr. Dale removed his hat.
Miss Fairchild.
Mr. Dale, I understand the wet field is keeping you from planting.
His eyes moved briefly towards Mr. Elwood.
Aye, miss.
If Barnes brings the estate cart and 2 men tomorrow, can the ditch be cleared before the end of the week?
Mr. Dale looked surprised.
It could.
And would that allow you to sow?
If the weather holds.
Then we shall try to persuade it to do so.
The farmer's mouth shifted, uncertain whether he had permission to smile. Marianne looked at the broken section of woven fencing.
And this?
Wind brought the ash limb down. I can mend it.
Is there anything you cannot mend?
Mr. Dale pointed with his hammer towards the west barn. Its roof sagged in the middle, and one wall leaned away from the others as though trying to escape.
That, miss.
Marianne considered it.
Does it know it is still a barn?
Mr. Elwood glanced towards the structure.
I have avoided telling it otherwise.
Mr. Dale laughed before he could stop himself. Marianne joined him, and even Mr. Elwood's composure gave way.
Then we shall inspect the west barn another day, when I have recovered from the sight of it.
When they left, Mr. Dale stood at the gate watching them go. Once they had passed beyond the farmhouse, Marianne glanced back.
Mr. Dale seemed uneasy when we arrived.
His rent is 6 weeks late.
She turned to Mr. Elwood.
You did not tell me.
I wanted you to meet the man before you were introduced to the debt.
That was considerate.
It was practical. A frightened tenant rarely gives useful answers.
The next cottage stood beneath 2 ancient pear trees. New thatch showed pale against the older roof. Mrs. Pike opened the door before they reached it. She was small, silver-haired, and wrapped in a brown shawl. 2 small grandchildren peered from behind her skirts.
Mr. Elwood.
Her gaze moved to Marianne.
You must be Miss Fairchild.
Mrs. Pike attempted a curtsy, but her balance faltered. Marianne stepped forward and caught her lightly by the arm.
Please do not trouble yourself.
Mrs. Pike steadied herself and looked from Marianne to Mr. Elwood.
The roof has held, miss. Not a drop came through in the storm.
I am glad.
It would not be there but for him.
Mr. Elwood's face became unreadable. Marianne glanced at the clean line of thatch above the door.
I have seen the account. The estate should have paid for the repair, and the debt belongs to Hawthorn.
Mrs. Pike's brow creased.
We always meant to repay what we could.
You owe nothing,
Marianne said.
Keeping your cottage dry was the estate's responsibility, not yours.
The older woman searched her face.
Nothing, miss?
Nothing.
One of the children slipped from behind her skirts and ran towards a wooden hoop beside the path. The other followed more slowly, still clutching a piece of bread. Mrs. Pike lowered her voice.
Mr. Elwood said much the same.
I am discovering that Mr. Elwood has an unfortunate habit of being right before the rest of us are prepared for it.
Mr. Elwood developed a sudden interest in the pear trees. Mrs. Pike smiled openly. She insisted that they enter long enough to see the repaired ceiling. The cottage smelled of yeast, wood smoke, and dried apples. Marianne asked about the chimney, the well, and the children's health. She made no promises she could not keep. She simply listened until Mrs. Pike ceased answering as a tenant before her new landowner and began speaking as herself. When they stepped outside again, Mr. Elwood opened his memorandum book.
You noticed the damp beside the hearth.
I noticed that Mrs. Pike had placed a chair where no one would willingly sit.
The flashing around the chimney requires repair.
Is it possible now?
With the sheets of lead remaining in the stable loft and a day's labour, yes.
Marianne nodded.
Very well. Add it to the list.
Mr. Elwood wrote it beneath the new heading. At Mill Cottage, they found the child whose doctor's fee he had paid darting after hens across the yard, bareheaded despite his mother's repeated calls. His colour was healthy, his voice remarkably strong, and his principal affliction appeared to be an objection to wearing his cap. His mother thanked Mr. Elwood in a low voice. He answered briefly and looked towards the repaired wheel of the milk cart. Marianne spared him further gratitude by asking whether it had given any trouble since the repair. By the time they reached the village, word of their visit had travelled ahead of them. The blacksmith emerged from his forge, wiping his hands upon his apron. The shopkeeper stood in the doorway, and a labourer repairing the pump straightened to touch his cap. No one approached too closely, yet faces appeared at windows and conversations quieted as Marianne passed. She understood then that Hawthorn's emptiness did not end at the walls of the manor. For too long, the estate had spoken through leaking roofs, unpaid accounts, broken carts, and fields that could not be planted. Mr. Elwood had heard it. He had warned, recorded, and repaired what he could. But the authority to answer had belonged to another. Now it belonged to Marianne. Mr. Elwood introduced her without ceremony. Marianne asked the blacksmith about the estate horses, the shopkeeper what remained owing upon Hawthorn's account, and the labourer whether the pump froze during winter. Each answer added another demand to a list already too long. Yet the list no longer seemed to be a catalogue of ruin. Some things required money, others required labour, order, or time, and some had begun to change simply because they had finally been noticed. Edward had expected the tenants to receive Miss Fairchild civilly. She owned their cottages, their fields, and the roads beneath their feet. Courtesy cost them little. He had not expected them to trust her. Yet he had watched Mr. Dale's wariness give way to laughter. Mrs. Pike had ceased measuring every word before she spoke. In the village, people had begun answering Miss Fairchild honestly because she listened without making promises she could not keep. She did not yet understand the estate, but she understood people. They ate the luncheon Mrs. Harding had packed beside the village green. Miss Fairchild sat upon a low stone wall while Edward divided the bread and cheese, placed a fresh apple beside each of them, and cut the cold apple pie with the precision he ordinarily reserved for allocating seed grain.
You have given me the smaller slice.
You have the larger apple.
That is not the same thing.
It is the more valuable part of the pie.
According to whose survey?
Mine.
I begin to see the danger of allowing you near an independent land agent.
A white goose emerged from behind the wall and fixed its attention upon Edward's portion. He moved the plate. The goose followed.
Do not show weakness,
Miss Fairchild advised.
I have no intention of negotiating.
The goose stretched its neck and seized the edge of the napkin. Edward caught the plate with one hand and the cloth with the other, but the bread rolled into the grass. Miss Fairchild laughed. The sound was sudden and unguarded. Edward looked up to find her watching him, her hazel eyes bright with amusement. He had noticed on the day of her arrival that she was beautiful. He had set the observation aside as irrelevant. The warmth of her complexion, the copper lights in her chestnut hair, and the careful composure of her mouth had no bearing upon the duties of a steward. Laughter altered her. It brought colour into her cheeks and softened the composure she usually maintained. For one unguarded moment, her beauty ceased to be a fact he could politely ignore. His own laughter answered hers before he could prevent it. The goose used the opportunity to steal the bread. Edward watched it retreat across the grass.
I believe I have been assessed and found wanting.
Only in matters of poultry.
Geese are extortionists with feathers.
Miss Fairchild laughed again. Edward was unexpectedly glad to hear it. The moment passed, but the distance between them did not entirely return when they resumed the road. They returned by way of the home farm. Barnes had agreed to spare the cart, and Mr. Dale's eldest son had found 2 labourers willing to help clear the ditch. In the stable yard, men were securing the loose roof slates. Near the kitchen court, Tom had begun separating sound timber from boards too rotten to save. None of it was enough to rescue Hawthorn. Yet, taken together, the small signs of work gave the estate an unfamiliar sense of movement. As they approached the south garden, Miss Fairchild caught sight of pale yellow among the weeds and left the path.
What is it?
Edward asked. She crossed the damp grass towards the sundial. Several primroses had opened between the stones beside a small patch where the ivy had been disturbed. Miss Fairchild crouched beside them.
I pulled some of the ivy away when I first arrived, only enough to uncover part of the stone.
Edward looked at the flowers.
Then they were likely there all along, waiting to be seen.
She touched one leaf without disturbing it.
Time reveals what care preserves,
she said softly. Edward remembered the words beneath her mother's painting. His memorandum book remained closed beneath his arm.
The land agent may tell me tomorrow that keeping Hawthorn is impossible,
she said.
He may.
And the neighbouring landowner may make an offer too sensible to refuse.
That is also possible.
She looked up at him.
You would advise me to sell if you believed it was the wisest course.
His answer did not come at once.
I would advise you honestly.
That was not quite what I asked.
No.
Miss Fairchild rose and brushed the damp soil from her gloves.
I do not yet know what I shall do.
I know.
She glanced once more at the primroses before walking towards the house. At the edge of the garden, she turned.
Are you coming, Mr. Elwood?
In a moment.
She continued beneath the lime trees, pausing to speak to Tom before disappearing through the east door. Edward remained beside the sundial. For 8 years, he had measured Hawthorn's losses in failing roofs, declining rents, and fields left too long without care. He had believed that preserving the estate, in whatever form remained possible, was the whole of his duty. If Marianne sold, he would help her do it honestly. He would protect the tenants, settle the accounts, and place Hawthorn into new hands with as little harm as possible. But as the door closed behind her, Edward understood that it was no longer Hawthorn's loss he feared most. Whatever became of the estate, he did not want Marianne to leave. Chapter 7. The garden. Marianne had dressed without assistance, as she always did, yet the business had taken considerably longer than usual. She first chose the brown merino gown, which was warm, serviceable, and entirely suitable for an April morning. After putting it on, she regarded herself in the glass, removed it again, and selected a walking dress of soft blue wool. The brown would have been more sensible. The blue brought out the copper lights in her hair. That consideration was so foolish that she nearly changed back at once. Mr. Sayer was expected. It was entirely proper that the owner of Hawthorn should appear composed and presentable before the land agent, who had come to judge whether her inheritance could be saved. This explanation did not account for why she arranged her hair twice, nor why she finally fastened it with a narrow blue ribbon ordinarily reserved for special occasions. Marianne examined her reflection.
Absurd,
she told it. Nevertheless, she left the ribbon where it was. She had scarcely entered the breakfast room when the sound of hooves crossed the stable yard. Through the window, she saw Mr. Elwood dismount and pass the reins to Tom. His dark blue coat was damp at the shoulders from the morning mist. He removed his hat as he turned towards the house, and the wind disturbed his dark hair before he smoothed it back. Marianne's hand rose involuntarily to the ribbon in her hair. She lowered it at once. Mrs. Harding entered carrying a folded cloth for the sideboard.
It is a long ride from his cottage each morning,
Marianne said. Mrs. Harding placed the cloth upon the polished wood.
Mr. Elwood is accustomed to it, miss.
Even in winter?
In every weather. When the road is unsafe for riding, he takes the shorter path through Miller's Wood on foot.
Marianne kept her attention upon the window.
His family must find such hours inconvenient.
Mrs. Harding paused.
His family, miss?
I understood that the cottage belonged to a cousin.
It does. Mr. Elwood's cousin lives in Cheltenham and seldom visits. Mr. Elwood has the cottage to himself.
I see.
Mrs. Harding smoothed one corner of the cloth.
Mr. Elwood has never married, miss.
Marianne turned from the window.
I did not ask whether he had.
No, miss.
Mrs. Harding's expression remained perfectly respectful. Marianne wished it had been slightly less knowing.
I should finish my coffee before it grows cold.
Of course, miss.
Mrs. Harding withdrew without further comment. The information should have done no more than clarify Mr. Elwood's domestic arrangements. The relief it brought was considerably harder to explain. Mr. Sayer arrived before 10 in a dark travelling carriage spattered with mud. He was a compact gentleman of perhaps 50, with iron-grey hair, sharp eyes, and the brisk manner of a man who regarded unnecessary conversation as a defect in other people. He accepted coffee, declined cake, and spent the first hour in the estate office examining the ledgers. Marianne sat opposite him while Mr. Elwood stood beside the long table, answering questions about leases, arrears, drainage, timber, livestock, and repairs. Mr. Sayer turned each page with care.
The accounts are orderly,
he said at last. Marianne glanced at Mr. Elwood.
They did not appear so when I first saw them.
The figures are alarming.
Mr. Sayer replied.
The accounts themselves are remarkably clear.
He removed his spectacles and polished them with a square of linen.
Your late great-uncle postponed expenditure wherever it could be postponed and, in several instances, where it could not. The result is not one great disaster, but a multitude of smaller failures arriving together.
Can Hawthorn recover?
Mr. Sayer replaced his spectacles.
That depends upon what you mean by recover.
Can it support itself?
In time, perhaps.
And until then?
It will require capital. The accounts indicate inadequate drainage, cottages in need of repair, and serious expense in the west wing. There is timber that may be sold without injuring the estate, though not as much as one might wish. If the land is improved, its yield should improve with it, but neither will happen quickly.
How long?
I should prefer to inspect the estate before giving you a firm answer. From the accounts alone, I would expect 3 years before you saw substantial benefit, and perhaps 5 before Hawthorn could be called sound.
Marianne folded her hands in her lap.
And if I sell?
You would exchange uncertainty for a fixed sum and place the responsibility in the hands of someone with greater capital.
Mr. Elwood's expression did not change. Mr. Sayer continued.
The neighbouring landowner has made no formal offer, but the inquiry is serious. The estate would be attractive to a man who already owns adjoining land, and for whom the house would be of little consequence.
Marianne looked towards the window.
What would become of Hawthorn Manor?
That would be for the purchaser to decide.
The answer was reasonable. She disliked it immediately. Mr. Sayer closed the ledger.
Hawthorn is not beyond saving, Miss Fairchild. I would not tell you that it is, but keeping it would be the more difficult course.
Not necessarily the wrong one.
No, difficulty and error are not the same thing.
It was the first answer he had given that sounded less like arithmetic. The remainder of the morning took them through the principal rooms, cellars, outbuildings, and grounds. Mr. Sayer asked few questions, but missed little. After luncheon, Mr. Sayer and Mr. Elwood set out to inspect the lower farms. Marianne accompanied them as far as the home farm, where Mr. Dale met them beside the west barn. The farmer answered Mr. Sayer's questions about the roof and leaning wall, then glanced at Marianne with poorly concealed amusement.
Miss Fairchild asked yesterday whether it knew it was still a barn.
Mr. Sayer studied the sagging structure in silence.
Does it?
The matter remains under consideration,
Mr. Elwood said gravely. Marianne turned away before either gentleman saw her smile. She left them discussing rafters and returned to the house by way of the south garden. The primroses beside the sundial were visible from the path now, a scattering of pale yellow beneath the grey afternoon sky. Around them, ivy and nettles still crowded the stones. The old gravel walk had disappeared beneath moss and years of fallen leaves. During his inspection of the grounds, Mr. Sayer had observed that restoring the ornamental garden would bring Hawthorn no financial return. Marianne stood looking at the flowers. Not everything worth preserving appeared in an account. She found Tom near the kitchen court and asked for a pair of stout gloves, a hand spade, and a pruning knife. His expression suggested that no lady had ever made such a request at Hawthorn.
Shall I fetch one of the men, miss?
You may ask one of them to clear the heavier growth tomorrow. I intend only to begin.
Tom brought the tools and remained within sight, sorting salvaged timber near the kitchen court gate. Marianne knelt beside the sundial. The ivy resisted her first efforts. Its tough stems and clinging roots had forced themselves between the stones, gripping them with the determination of something that had mistaken neglect for ownership. She cut what she could, pulled away the loosened strands, and uncovered another section of the base. A thorn caught the cuff of her glove as she reached for a dark, twisted stem.
Do not cut that one.
Marianne looked over her shoulder. Mr. Elwood stood at the edge of the path. Beyond him, Mr. Sayre's carriage was disappearing between the lime trees.
This one?
He crossed the damp grass towards her.
It is not dead growth. It is an old rose.
Marianne examined the stem in her hand.
It has a most convincing appearance of death.
It is dormant.
How can you tell?
Mr. Elwood crouched a short distance away and drew the edge of the pruning knife lightly across one branch. A narrow line of green appeared beneath the bark.
It is still alive.
Marianne released it.
Then I have nearly murdered a rose.
You stopped before doing it any lasting injury.
Because you arrived in time.
That has occasionally proved useful.
She looked at him.
I begin to suspect you follow me about Hawthorn solely to prevent damage.
Only when you are carrying tools.
Mr. Elwood took up the hand spade.
You are using this incorrectly.
It is a spade. There cannot be many interpretations.
There are enough to trouble the roots of the primroses.
He loosened the soil at the edge of the ivy, working with quick, controlled movements. Marianne watched for a moment before taking up the pruning knife.
Did Mr. Sayre find anything you had not expected?
No.
That is not very comforting.
He found nothing worse than I expected.
That is only marginally better.
Mr. Elwood glanced at her.
He believes Hawthorn can be saved, given time.
He believes it might be saved, provided I am willing to spend 5 years discovering whether he is right.
And are you willing?
Marianne cut through a strand of ivy.
When I arrived, I believed Hawthorn was merely something that had happened to me.
Mr. Elwood waited. She looked towards the manor. Its golden stone was muted beneath the cloudy sky, but smoke rose from 2 chimneys now, and newly secured slates marked the roof above the library.
And now?
He asked.
Now I am beginning to think I may have happened to Hawthorn.
His expression softened.
I believe it has been waiting for you.
The words settled between them. Marianne bent her head and returned to the ivy, though she was suddenly very conscious of the ribbon in her hair. For several minutes, they worked without speaking. Tom's hammer sounded steadily from the kitchen court. Somewhere beyond the wall, a rook called from the elms. Marianne freed a length of vine from the base of the sundial.
Why did you choose estate work?
Mr. Elwood pressed the hand spade into the earth.
It suited me.
That explains very little.
I like knowing what must be done next.
Even when there is too much to do?
Especially then.
She considered him.
You could have taken a position at an estate in better condition.
I was offered one more than once.
But you remained here.
Yes.
Why?
He looked towards the house.
Hawthorn needed someone who knew it.
Marianne heard the part of the answer he had not given.
And did you never resent caring so much for a place that did not belong to you?
Mr. Elwood was silent for a moment.
Care is not wasted because possession belongs to someone else.
Marianne looked down at the primroses.
No,
she said quietly.
I suppose it is not.
She reached for another strand of ivy at the same moment he did. Their gloved hands met upon it. Neither moved at once. Mr. Elwood's gaze lifted to hers. The small space between them suddenly seemed impossible to ignore. A gust passed through the garden and loosened one end of the blue ribbon. It brushed Marianne's cheek before Mr. Elwood caught it lightly between his fingers.
You will lose this.
His voice had changed, only slightly, but enough. Marianne took the ribbon from him.
Thank you.
She pulled off one glove and retied it, though her fingers were not quite as steady as they ought to have been. Mr. Elwood returned to the ivy. By late afternoon, they had cleared only a small circle around the sundial. The garden beyond remained wild, the gravel walk was still hidden, and the rose required a gardener with greater knowledge than either of them possessed. Yet light reached the stone again. Marianne brushed away the moss from its base. The two words she had uncovered days earlier appeared first: time and care. Mr. Elwood held back the last stubborn strands of ivy while she cleared the remaining earth. Slowly, the rest of the carved inscription emerged. Time reveals what care preserves. Marianne traced the first word with one gloved finger.
The words were here all along.
They were.
Hidden, but not lost.
Mr. Elwood looked at her rather than the inscription.
No,
he said.
not lost.
Carriage wheels sounded along the lime avenue. Marianne straightened, one hand still resting upon the sundial. A travelling carriage appeared between the trees and drew up near the east entrance. The door opened, and Charles stepped down. He turned towards the garden and stopped. For one moment, surprise overcame Marianne's pleasure.
Charles?
Her brother's gaze travelled from her mud-stained gloves to Mr. Elwood standing beside her, then to the neglected manor beyond them.
I came as soon as I received your letter.
He looked again at Hawthorn.
Marianne, you cannot seriously mean to keep this place.
Chapter 8. An offer. Charles's declaration remained between them as Mrs. Harding hurried from the house to receive him. Marianne stepped away from the sundial and crossed the grass.
Charles, this is Mr. Elwood, Hawthorn's steward. Mr. Elwood, my brother, Mr. Charles Fairchild.
Mr. Elwood bowed.
Mr. Fairchild.
Charles returned the courtesy.
Mr. Elwood, I am glad to make your acquaintance.
His gaze moved from the tools at their feet to the newly cleared circle around the sundial, then to Hawthorn Manor beyond it. Marianne recognized the argument gathering in his expression.
Not here,
she said quietly. Charles glanced towards Mr. Elwood.
No, we shall discuss it inside.
Mr. Elwood gathered the tools.
I will leave you to your brother, Miss Fairchild.
Marianne watched him cross towards the kitchen court before following Charles into the house. Charles said little as they passed through the east hall, but his gaze found the stain upon the ceiling, the faded carpet, and the crack running above the library door. By the time Mrs. Harding brought a tray to the drawing room, his expression had settled into the one he ordinarily wore when examining an account he expected to dislike. He ate cold chicken and bread while Marianne gave him the plainest account she could: the unpaid wages, the leaking roof, Mr. Sayer's inspection, the inquiry from the neighbouring landowner, and the repairs postponed year after year. When she named the capital Hawthorn would require, Charles set down his fork.
That would consume nearly all the money Father left you.
Not all.
Near enough.
It would be spent over several years. Mr. Sayer believes the estate may support itself again.
May?
In time.
Charles leaned back.
And until then, you are to live carefully while Hawthorn swallows every pound you possess.
I have always lived carefully.
That is precisely what troubles me.
Marianne looked at him. His expression softened.
You remained with Father when you might have married. You managed his house, nursed him, and made every burden appear smaller than it was. Then you came to us, and began making yourself useful before we had finished telling you that you need not.
I loved Father, and I was happy with you.
I know. But you have spent your life caring for what belonged to other people. Now that something belongs to you, I do not want it to cost you the security you have.
Hawthorn is the first home that has ever belonged to me.
Then sell it and buy one that does not require you to rebuild half of Gloucestershire.
A knock prevented her reply. Barnes entered with a card upon a salver.
Mr. Hugh Latham of Westcombe, miss. Mr. Elwood is with him in the estate office. The gentleman asks whether you will receive him.
Charles's brows rose.
The neighbouring landowner.
Marianne took the card.
Please show him in.
Mr. Latham entered a few minutes later with Mr. Elwood beside him. He was about 40, tall and composed, with light brown hair touched by grey at the temples. His clothes were plainly cut but expensive, and his manner suggested a man accustomed to having practical requests granted. He bowed.
Miss Fairchild, thank you for receiving me without notice.
Marianne introduced her brother.
I understand Mr. Sayer has been inspecting Hawthorn.
Mr. Latham said.
He has.
And Mr. Elwood has shown me the boundary maps.
Mr. Elwood placed a leather portfolio upon the table and remained standing beside the table. Mr. Latham accepted tea.
I will not disguise my purpose. Mr. Bell informed me that Hawthorn's future had not yet been decided.
It has not.
Mr. Elwood has made that clear.
Marianne glanced towards him. His attention remained upon the portfolio. Mr. Latham drew a folded document from his coat.
Westcombe adjoins Hawthorn along the northern fields. The woodland would form one continuous tract with my own, and the lower farms would benefit from drainage works already planned on my side of the boundary.
He placed the paper before her.
The figure reflects Hawthorn's particular value to Westcombe rather than its present income.
Marianne opened it. The sum was greater than she had expected. For one unguarded moment, relief overwhelmed every other feeling. It was not merely the money. She imagined Mrs. Pike's chimney repaired before autumn, the wet field properly drained, and wages paid without delay or private sacrifice. Hawthorn's tenants might no longer depend upon temporary repairs, postponed accounts, and Mr. Elwood's willingness to provide what the estate could not. She could purchase a comfortable house and preserve most of her independence. The tenants would pass to a man with the means to repair the cottages before another winter. The farms might improve without consuming the modest security her father had left her. But Hawthorn would cease to be hers. Its future, and the fate of the house itself, would belong to Mr. Latham. It was not the future Marianne wanted. That did not prevent her from seeing how easily it might answer many of the difficulties before her.
What would become of the manor?
I have no need of another principal residence.
Mr. Latham replied.
The east wing might serve as a guest residence. The older portion would require examination. If it proved unsafe, taking it down might be the prudent course.
Marianne thought of her mother's room.
Taking it down?
Only those parts that could not justify repair.
The answer was measured and reasonable. She disliked it immediately. Mr. Latham studied her.
I do not underestimate your attachment to Hawthorn, Miss Fairchild.
I have known it for little more than a week.
Attachment does not always wait upon length of acquaintance.
His gaze held hers a moment longer than courtesy required. Charles noticed. So did Mr. Elwood. Mr. Latham continued.
Nor is a purchase the only arrangement by which neighbouring estates may be united. If, after a proper acquaintance, a closer connection between our families should prove agreeable, Hawthorn need not be sold. It could be preserved by settlement.
Silence settled over the drawing room. Marianne understood him. Beside her, Charles became very still. When she glanced at him, the slight lift of his brows told her that he had understood as well. Mr. Elwood's expression did not alter, but one hand closed briefly at his side. Mr. Latham waited without pressing her. Even the house might survive. If Hawthorn were settled for her use, Marianne might possess both the means and the influence to argue for more than the preservation of one wing. Her mother's room need not be abandoned. The library might remain warm and dry. The garden could be reclaimed without every hour of labour being weighed against its cost. It was an astonishingly complete solution, provided she was willing to make herself part of the bargain. She knew almost nothing of Mr. Latham beyond his wealth, his good sense, and his interest in joining what lay on either side of a boundary. She could imagine Hawthorn secure beneath such an arrangement far more easily than she could imagine herself happy within it. Yet the possibility could not be dismissed merely because it failed to stir her heart. Mr. Latham's expression remained composed.
I hope you will permit me to call again. There is no need for haste. I should prefer you to see Westcombe before reaching any decision concerning Hawthorn.
That is considerate.
It is practical. A decision is sounder when one understands what is being offered.
He rose.
The written offer for the estate will remain open for 1 month.
Marianne stood.
Thank you, Mr. Latham.
He bowed.
Until our next meeting, Miss Fairchild.
Mr. Elwood accompanied him from the room. The door had scarcely closed before Charles spoke.
Well,
Marianne folded the paper.
No sentence beginning in that manner has ever improved my life.
he plainly admires you.
He has known me for 20 minutes.
He admires what he has seen.
He has seen a woman sitting beside an unprofitable estate he wishes to acquire.
He has seen that she is intelligent, composed, and deeply attached to Hawthorn.
Marianne set the offer upon the table.
You believe I should encourage him?
I believe you should consider him. He is respectable, wealthy, and able to save Hawthorn without exhausting your income.
As his wife?
Would that be so terrible?
You have known him for less than an hour.
I have known the danger of financial ruin considerably longer.
Marianne turned away. Charles's voice gentled.
I am not asking you to marry a man you dislike. I am asking you not to reject the possibility of a courtship merely because his interest is practical. Hawthorn might remain intact. The tenants would have a far better prospect of security. And you would not wake 5 years from now to discover that saving this place had left you dependent upon me.
I would never be a burden to you.
You could not be. That does not mean I wish such a future for you.
He spoke of me and Hawthorn as two methods of joining adjoining interests.
I grant that his language lacked poetry.
It lacked everything except efficiency.
Efficiency is not the worst quality in a husband.
No, but it is a poor substitute for affection.
The drawing-room door opened before Charles could answer. Mr. Elwood returned carrying the portfolio. Charles glanced from him to Marianne.
I shall write to my wife before dinner.
Charles left them, though the drawing-room door remained open and Barnes could be heard moving in the hall. Mr. Elwood placed the portfolio beside Mr. Latham's offer.
The boundary maps.
Thank you.
He turned to go.
Mr. Elwood.
He stopped.
Do you believe the offer is fair?
Yes.
The answer came without hesitation.
Generous.
Mr. Latham has valued Hawthorn according to its usefulness to Westcombe. Few other purchasers would offer as much.
And if his interest is not confined to Hawthorn?
Mr. Elwood's hand rested upon the back of a chair.
Mr. Latham is a respectable man.
That was not what I asked.
No.
Marianne looked at the folded paper.
Do you believe I should encourage him?
His fingers tightened against the polished wood.
A marriage settlement of the kind he proposes could place Hawthorn beyond its present financial difficulties.
You speak as though that settles the matter.
It settles the part upon which I am qualified to advise you.
And the rest?
The rest is not mine to consider.
The words were perfectly correct. Marianne had never disliked his correctness more.
You have spent 8 years preserving Hawthorn, yet the moment another man offers an easier way, you would have me accept it.
I would have you consider the future being offered to you.
As Mr. Latham's wife?
Yes.
You make it sound remarkably simple.
No.
His voice hardened.
I make it sound practical.
Is that all you believe matters?
Mr. Elwood looked at her. For one suspended moment, she thought he might answer the question she had not quite asked. Then his expression closed.
What I have done for Hawthorn should not influence whom you marry.
You assume that is what influences me.
His gaze held hers.
I assume nothing.
And now your duty requires you to advise me to marry him.
My duty requires me to tell you the truth.
Only the part of it you find convenient.
His eyes returned to hers.
That is unjust.
Perhaps.
Marianne picked up Mr. Latham's offer.
Until I decide what is to be done, no further work upon the house or ornamental grounds should be begun unless it is necessary to prevent damage.
Mr. Elwood's face altered, though only slightly.
Very well.
The accounts, tenant repairs, and ordinary estate business may continue.
Of course.
He bowed.
Miss Fairchild.
Only after Mr. Elwood had left did Marianne sink into the nearest chair. Mr. Latham's offer promised an immediate answer to Hawthorn's difficulties. Beside it lay Mr. Elwood's worn portfolio, its corners softened by 8 years of service to the estate. One offered an easier future, the other reminded Marianne what preserving Hawthorn had already required. Outside, evening gathered over the south garden. The newly cleared circle around the sundial remained a small island amid the weeds. Before riding back to his cottage that evening, Edward returned to the estate office. He lit the lamp upon the desk. Mr. Latham's offer was gone, but his gaze returned to the place where it had lain. He opened the bottom drawer. His private papers lay beneath the estate correspondence, tied with plain string. He lifted out the bundle, drew his worn memorandum book from his coat, and placed it on top. His hand rested upon the cover. Its pages contained no confession, only figures, reminders, repairs, and duties carried forward from one day to the next. Yet he had written more of his life into that book than he had ever spoken aloud. 8 years of Hawthorn fitted into surprisingly little space. He had packed once because Marianne had dismissed him. This time, she had not asked him to go. She had only been offered a future in which there would be no place for him. Chapter 9. The letter. The house was too quiet. No hammer sounded from the kitchen court, no scrape of tools carried through the passage. Marianne had ordered that no further work should begin until she had decided Hawthorn's future. Mr. Elwood had obeyed her. By 9 o'clock he had not arrived. Marianne decided that their disagreement ought to be settled before she wrote to Mr. Latham. Charles agreed to accompany her to the cottage beyond Miller's Wood. The carriage turned off the road into a narrow lane beneath dripping branches. A travelling chaise stood before the cottage. Mr. Elwood was at the gate with a woman in a dark green pelisse. She was handsome, perhaps a few years older than Marianne, and he held both her hands in his. As Marianne watched, he bent and kissed her cheek. A little girl was handed down from the chaise and ran towards him. He caught her against him, smiling with a warmth Marianne had never seen upon his face. Charles leaned forward.
Shall I ask the coachman to stop?
Marianne looked away.
No, Mr. Elwood is plainly occupied.
Their carriage passed the open gate before Mr. Elwood looked towards the lane. When the cottage had disappeared behind the trees, Charles asked,
Do you know the lady?
No.
Then perhaps you should not decide what she is to him.
I have decided nothing.
Mrs. Harding had said Mr. Elwood had never married. She had not said that he had never formed an attachment. The thought seemed to lengthen the road back to Hawthorn. In the drawing room, Charles laid Mr. Latham's offer upon the table.
Have you reached a decision?
Yes.
Marianne crossed to the writing desk.
I shall not sell Hawthorn.
Charles exhaled slowly.
And Mr. Latham's other proposal?
He did not make one.
He made the beginning of one.
Then I shall prevent him from proceeding further.
Charles came nearer.
You need not refuse him merely because his manner offended you.
It did not. Mr. Latham offered an excellent solution. He is respectable, wealthy, and able to provide everything Hawthorn lacks.
And yet?
Marianne thought of the cottage gate and Mr. Elwood holding another woman's hands. The sight had altered nothing.
I do not wish to become one more improvement by which he joins two estates.
She looked down at the blank paper. For one treacherous moment, the offer had seemed to settle every difficulty before her. Only afterwards had Marianne understood that saving Hawthorn and surrendering her own future need not be the same thing.
Mr. Latham could make the estate secure,
she said.
But I do not wish to owe my home to a marriage I would not otherwise choose.
Charles was silent.
Hawthorn may consume more of my income than prudence approves,
she continued.
It may require years of work. I may discover that determination is not enough.
Perhaps, but I do not believe you will.
She looked up. He set the offer upon the desk.
I wanted you to sell because I feared Hawthorn would leave you with nothing.
It has given me something I did not know I wanted.
What?
A place in which the final word is mine. A home.
His gaze moved towards the windows and the neglected garden beyond.
I cannot pretend to understand why you love it.
I am not certain I do, not yet.
But you mean to remain?
Yes.
Charles nodded.
Then I shall help you find a way to keep it without sacrificing every pound father left you.
You will?
I am your brother. Opposition has failed. Interference is the natural next step.
She laughed and took his hand.
Thank you.
Do not thank me until you have seen the economies I intend to recommend.
Marianne wrote to Mr. Latham. She thanked him for the generosity of his offer, informed him that she meant to retain Hawthorn, and added that she could not encourage a closer connection between their families. Charles read the finished letter.
You have refused him twice in 6 sentences.
Would 7 make it kinder?
No, merely longer.
She sealed it. Hooves sounded in the yard. Marianne's hand tightened around the letter before she rose. Charles accompanied her into the hall, then turned into the library, leaving her to continue to the estate office alone. The office door stood open. Mr. Elwood stood behind the desk, tying a bundle of correspondence with plain string. His worn memorandum book lay beside it, and a valise stood near his chair. He looked up.
Miss Fairchild.
You are leaving.
His hand stilled.
I was preparing to.
Without speaking to me?
I intended to speak to you this morning. Our agreement was that I should remain until Hawthorn's future had been decided.
And you believed my decision would make your position unnecessary?
I thought it likely.
Mr. Elwood glanced at the letter in her hand.
You have written to Mr. Latham?
Yes.
She placed it upon the desk.
I have refused his offer.
The purchase?
And the other possibility.
The knot loosened beneath his fingers. For a moment, he did not move.
Hawthorn will require substantial capital.
I know.
The West Wing may not be saved in its entirety.
I know.
The estate may not support itself for several years.
Mr. Sayer was admirably thorough.
His gaze searched hers.
And you have chosen to remain?
Yes.
Marianne looked at the valise.
Were you so certain I would accept Mr. Latham?
No.
Then why were you packing?
Because my obligation to Hawthorn was nearly complete.
What obligation?
Mr. Elwood did not answer at once. He opened the bottom drawer and removed a sealed letter. Her name was written across it in her great-uncle's unsteady hand.
What is that?
A letter Mr. Hawthorn entrusted to me shortly before his death.
You have had a letter addressed to me?
Yes.
Why was it not given to me when I arrived?
He instructed me to wait until you had decided Hawthorn's future.
Marianne stared at him.
He wished to influence my decision only after it had been made.
He wished to avoid influencing it at all.
Mr. Elwood placed the letter upon the desk.
He knew Hawthorn might become a burden. He did not want affection for him, guilt, or the wishes of a dying man to determine what you did with it.
And what did he ask of you?
He said, look after Hawthorn, and when Marianne comes, give her time to understand it.
Her throat tightened.
He believed you might dismiss the house before you had seen what it had been, or what it might become. He did not ask me to persuade you to keep it.
And if I chose to sell?
I was to help you do so honestly.
And then leave?
Yes.
Marianne broke the seal. Mr. Elwood stepped back from the desk while she unfolded the page.
My dear Marianne, if Edward has obeyed me, you will not read this until you have decided what is to become of Hawthorn. I required him to wait, because I would not have my wishes mistaken for your own. Charles has a home, a wife, children, and the property that was always to be his. You have spent much of your life making yourself useful in houses where you were loved, but where the final word could never belong to you. Hawthorn is a poor gift in money and an expensive one in every other respect, yet it is yours. You may keep it, sell it, repair it, or allow it to pass from the family. I ask only that the choice be freely made. I hope you may come to love the place your mother loved. I hope also that you may understand the man who cared for it faithfully while I lacked the courage to face what preserving it required. You and Edward have each made duty a sufficient occupation for an entire life. I have sometimes wondered whether, if you came to understand him, you might see in Edward not only the man who preserved Hawthorn, but a man with whom you could make a home. An old man is permitted one hope, provided it is not mistaken for a command. Your affectionate uncle, Theodore Hawthorn.
Marianne read the final lines twice. Her great-uncle had left her no command, only a choice that belonged to her alone.
He hoped we might understand one another.
Yes.
Did you know what he hoped?
Not until the night he entrusted the letter to me.
And you never mentioned it?
How could I? Telling you would hardly have left you free from influence.
A breath of laughter escaped her.
That is infuriatingly reasonable.
I feared you might think so.
He reached for the bundle of papers. Marianne placed her hand over them.
You said your duty was complete?
Yes.
And you mean to return to Worcestershire?
If Hawthorn no longer requires me.
To the woman at the cottage?
The question escaped before Marianne could recall it. Mr. Elwood frowned.
What woman?
The woman in the green pelisse. I saw you with her this morning.
Understanding altered his face.
Elizabeth is my sister.
Marianne stared.
Your sister?
Mrs. Harcourt. She's been widowed for 3 years. The little girl is my niece.
Relief swept through Marianne too quickly to conceal. His gaze sharpened.
You believed she was...
I did not know what to believe.
She came because I wrote to her after you dismissed me. She wished me to return to Worcestershire.
And will you?
That depends upon what remains for me here.
The answer left no shelter for either of them. Marianne's heart beat painfully beneath her ribs.
I refused Mr. Latham before I knew who she was.
Mr. Elwood became very still.
His offer answered every practical difficulty, but I could not imagine building a life beside him. When I imagined remaining here, every future in which Hawthorn felt like home included you.
Marianne.
It was the first time he had spoken her name.
Then tell me what you want, Edward.
His breath caught.
I have tried not to love you.
Have you succeeded?
No.
He crossed the small distance between them.
I loved your courage before I understood you, your kindness before you trusted me, and your determination even when it was directed against me.
That was not my finest hour.
It was memorable.
She laughed softly. His hand lifted, then stopped. Marianne placed her fingers in his.
I love you, though I cannot say precisely when it happened.
I can.
When?
The goose.
Marianne stared.
The goose?
You laughed at me.
It stole your bread.
And destroyed what remained of my resistance.
Her laughter filled the office. From the library came the deliberate sound of Charles closing a book. Edward glanced towards the open doorway.
I should speak to your brother.
You need not ask his permission.
No, but I should like his goodwill.
Charles appeared in the doorway, the closed book still in his hand.
You have it. Though I cannot promise never to offer an opinion.
Marianne smiled.
I should hardly recognize you if you did not.
Charles's expression softened.
Then we understand one another.
He glanced towards the hall.
I shall tell Mrs. Harding that Hawthorn is to remain yours. I suspect she will insist upon opening the great hall.
Within the hour, the household knew that Hawthorn would not be sold. By noon, the great hall was open once more. Dust sheets came down, windows were unlatched. Tom and Barnes carried wood to the hearth, while Mrs. Harding directed the cleaning of the long table. Charles discovered 3 branches of candles in a cupboard and declared them salvageable. The hall remained faded, its plaster cracked and its banners dulled. Yet firelight moved across the carved wood again, and laughter rose towards the dark rafters. Outside, Tom and Barnes cleared the remaining ivy from around the sundial. The whole pedestal now stood free, with the old gravel circle beginning to emerge beneath the weeds. Time reveals what care preserves. Edward joined Marianne beside it as evening light spread across the garden. Marianne glanced towards the lighted windows.
Anyone in the hall may see us.
Does that trouble you?
No.
Warmth entered his gaze.
Then only one question remains.
What is it?
Edward looked towards the house, then back at her.
Whether I am to remain your steward.
Marianne considered him gravely.
That position may no longer be suitable.
I had reached the same conclusion.
Then tomorrow we shall discuss the terms upon which you intend to remain.
His smile arrived slowly.
I shall come prepared.
He offered her his arm. Together they walked towards the lighted hall. Chapter 10. What Remains? Charles sat opposite Marianne at the breakfast table, pretending not to notice how often she glanced towards the clock. Edward arrived 10 minutes after 9 in the dark blue coat he had worn on the day of her arrival. It had been carefully brushed, and his cravat was tied with unusual precision. For once, he carried no memorandum book. Marianne remembered his promise to come prepared and became abruptly interested in the arrangement of the breakfast cups. Charles's brows rose.
You appear unusually formal, Mr. Elwood.
Edward looked at Marianne.
I came to discuss the terms upon which I might remain at Hawthorn.
Marianne set down her coffee.
Then perhaps we should continue in the estate office.
A low groan travelled through the house. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Timber cracked somewhere beyond the west passage. Edward was on his feet before the crash came. The floor shuddered. Plaster and stone fell in a roar from the direction of the west wing, followed by the heavy thud of collapsing timber. Mrs. Harding hurried to the breakfast room door, one hand gripping the frame. Her face had lost its colour.
The west wing, sir. Something has come down.
Edward crossed into the hall at once.
Keep everyone away from the west passage.
Tom came running through the kitchen passage, his coat and hair powdered with dust.
No one was working in the wing, sir.
Fetch the builder and bring him by the shortest road.
Tom turned and ran towards the kitchen court. Marianne followed Edward as far as the closed doors of the west passage. Dust curled beneath them in a pale cloud.
My mother's room.
We do not yet know what has fallen.
A second, smaller crack sounded beyond the doors. Edward put out one arm, barring her path.
No one enters until the structure has been examined.
You mean to examine it?
From the north lawn.
He turned towards the kitchen passage. Marianne caught his arm.
Edward!
He looked down at her hand, then back at her face.
You will not go inside?
No.
Only then did she release him. Barnes hurried into the hall.
Account for everyone.
Edward told him.
Then keep the yard and outer wall clear.
Edward turned down the kitchen passage towards the door to the north lawn. Mrs. Harding drew Marianne farther from the west wing doors.
Cook and the indoor servants are safe, miss. Tom has gone for the builder, and Barnes is checking the yard.
For the next several minutes, orders and answers crossed the hall. Charles ordered the front doors opened to clear the dust. Barnes moved between the yard and the outbuildings, calling each servant by name. Mrs. Harding brought damp cloths for those coughing in the thickened air. Then another section fell. The crash came from above, followed by the heavy collapse of tiles and timber. Dust burst beneath the west wing doors and rolled into the hall. Marianne looked towards the kitchen passage. Edward had gone that way to reach the north lawn, but she had not seen him pass through the outer door. The same passage also led to the narrow stair within the west wing.
Where is Mr. Elwood?
Mrs. Harding stared towards the passage. Barnes was somewhere beyond the yard. Tom had gone to the village. No one answered. Edward had promised not to enter the wing. Yet Marianne could not be certain he had reached the lawn before the second collapse.
Edward!
Her voice carried through the hall. No answer came. Charles caught her arm as she moved towards the closed doors.
You cannot go in.
He may be there.
We do not know that.
He went towards the wing.
A timber shifted somewhere beyond the wall. Marianne pulled against Charles's hold.
Edward!
Only yesterday she had allowed herself to imagine a future in which he remained at Hawthorn. This morning, he had come prepared to ask what that future might be. The possibility had existed for less than a day, and already the thought of losing it was unbearable. The door from the north garden opened. Edward entered with pale dust streaking one shoulder and the side of his face. He stopped when he saw her.
Marianne?
Her knees weakened with relief. Anger followed before she could master either.
Where have you been?
Outside the north wall, I told Barnes.
Barnes was in the yard. No one knew where you were.
Edward looked from her face to Charles's hand upon her arm. Charles released her.
You thought I was inside?
She could not answer. His expression changed. He crossed the hall and took both her hands.
I should have told you myself.
Yes.
I did not enter the wing.
That is not as comforting as you appear to believe.
No,
he said quietly.
I see that.
Marianne's fingers tightened around his. Behind them, Charles let out a slow breath.
Perhaps the two of you might postpone the rest until we know whether the house intends to remain standing.
The builder arrived within half an hour with 2 men and timber for temporary shoring. The collapse had begun above the old nursery. Part of the roof had broken through the upper passage, carrying sections of ceiling and floor into the rooms below. The barrier Edward had erected years earlier had kept anyone from entering the most dangerous part of the wing. No one had been injured. Marianne closed her eyes for one brief moment, overcome with relief. Then she looked towards the broken wing and remembered what was still at risk within it. From the north lawn, Marianne could see the broken line of the roof. Tiles lay shattered upon the ground below, and one section of wall leaned outward above the old schoolroom.
The chamber above the schoolroom is still standing,
the builder said.
But the passage beside it has pulled away from the main wall. If the weight is not removed today, more may follow.
My mother's room.
Sound for the present, miss. It must be emptied today.
Marianne looked at Edward.
Can the wing be saved?
The builder removed his cap.
Not all of it. The fallen passage and the rooms beyond must come down as far as the nearest sound wall. We can shore the stair long enough to empty the chamber above the schoolroom. Preserving the chamber itself would require rebuilding the wall beside it, and I cannot promise the remaining structure would bear it.
What would it cost to preserve the chamber?
He named a sum lower than the cost of restoring the entire wing and far higher than Marianne wished to hear.
We shall do it.
Edward's gaze remained upon the broken roof.
Before you undertake the entire cost yourself, we should determine what can be met through salvage, timber sales, or the estate accounts.
There is no time to wait upon the estate accounts.
There is time to calculate before you promise whatever sum is asked.
Marianne turned to him.
My mother's room may fall.
I know.
Then why are you speaking as though the greater danger is that I might spend money?
Because I will not watch you exhaust your security whenever Hawthorn presents another emergency.
And I will not allow the room to be lost while we balance figures.
That is not what I am proposing.
It sounds very near to it.
The builder's men moved away to examine the outer wall. Charles stood at a tactful distance, speaking with Barnes. The builder remained nearby, waiting for their decision. Edward looked towards the broken roof.
If we attempt to preserve the chamber, we may have to retain the damaged wall beside it. That could carry the collapse into the sound portion of the house.
Marianne followed his gaze.
Then you believe I must let it go?
Edward did not answer at once. He looked towards the builder. The builder met her gaze.
We can empty it safely, miss. I would not advise trying to preserve it.
Marianne thought of the faded blue walls, the writing desk beneath the window, and the view across the south garden.
Then empty it first,
she said quietly.
I would rather lose the room than risk the house or the men working beneath it.
Edward's gaze remained upon her.
The books, letters, and furnishings can be saved.
Then we shall save those.
She looked again at the broken wing.
The room and the unsafe passage may come down.
She had imagined that saving Hawthorn meant refusing to let anything be lost. Now she understood that care sometimes required choosing what could be carried forward and what must be surrendered. Her great-uncle had mistaken delay for prudence until choice had been taken from him. Marianne would not repeat his error by pretending that every part of the wing could be preserved merely because she loved what it contained.
The contents are to be removed first,
she told the builder.
After that, take down whatever must be taken down to keep the house and your men safe.
He bowed his head.
Yes, miss.
Edward glanced towards the fallen passage.
The soundstone, slates, and timber can be used elsewhere.
Then they should go first wherever they will prevent the greatest harm.
A corner of his mouth lifted.
You are learning to speak like a steward.
I have had an exacting instructor.
Together, they settled the remaining details, and Marianne gave the builder permission to begin. Timber braces were raised beneath the damaged passage, making the stair and her mother's chamber safe enough to enter for a few hours. Loose tiles were removed by hand, and ropes secured the beams that threatened to pull against the surviving wall. By afternoon, the contents of her mother's room had been carried into the north gallery. Mrs. Harding wrapped the porcelain dish and brass seal in linen. Tom arranged the books in careful stacks. Charles carried out the drawers of the writing desk one by one, remarking that their mother had possessed an unreasonable number of gardening books. Theodore's letter lay safely between the closed pages of the sketchbook, with her mother's letter beside it. When the last drawer had been removed, the builder ordered everyone away from the wing. Marianne remained upon the lawn as the dismantling began. For one brief moment, faded blue paper showed through the broken plaster. Then the wall fell. The loss grieved her, though not as she had expected. Letting the room go was not an abandonment of Hawthorn. What the room had preserved of her mother was safe, and dismantling its walls would protect the house that remained. Later, Marianne stood beside the rescued writing desk in the north gallery. The books, letters, porcelain dish, and faded sketchbook had been gathered around it, displaced but unharmed. Beyond the closed doors, men worked among the broken timbers. Each blow of a hammer travelled through the floor. Edward entered with traces of dust still caught in his hair.
The men have reached the nearest sound wall,
he said.
The builder believes the rest of the house is secure.
Marianne rested one hand upon her mother's sketchbook.
This morning, I thought I had lost you before you could ask me what you came to ask.
Edward became still.
I had hoped to choose a more orderly moment.
Hawthorn appears opposed to orderly moments.
That has been my experience.
He came nearer.
I have spoken to Charles.
And?
He has no objection.
Only opinions?
Several.
That also has been my experience.
Edward smiled, then grew serious.
I have no estate and little property beyond what I have managed to save.
That does not trouble me.
I know, but I would have you understand what I can offer.
Marianne waited.
My work, my loyalty, and all the years that remain to me are yours, if you will have them. I cannot promise that Hawthorn will ever become easy. I can promise that you will not bear it alone.
Beyond the doors, ropes creaked as another timber was lifted from the fallen passage. Edward took her hand.
Marianne, will you marry me?
She looked at the man who had preserved Hawthorn when preservation seemed impossible, who had given her time to understand the house, and who now offered to share every burden its future might bring.
Yes, though I reserve the right to be informed whenever you disappear during a collapse.
His thumb moved across her fingers.
I accept the condition.
Marianne glanced at the cravat he had tied with such unusual precision.
Then there remains the matter you came to discuss.
The terms upon which I might remain at Hawthorn.
Yes.
His expression softened.
I had hoped to remain as your husband.
She smiled.
That position may be suitable.
He laughed softly and bent to kiss her. Below them, one hammer answered another through the wounded house. Hawthorn had lost a room that day, but the empty manor had become a home. Epilogue. By the following summer, Hawthorn Manor was dressed for a wedding. White roses framed the entrance, and ribbons stirred from the lime trees along the avenue. The ceremony had been held that morning in the village church, but the wedding breakfast belonged to Hawthorn. Every window stood open to the warm air. Music drifted from the great hall, mingling with clinking glasses and the laughter of children released from their best behaviour. Charles and his wife had brought their 2 sons, who spent the afternoon racing Tom across the lawn and turning discarded wedding ribbons into prizes of their own. Charles watched their efforts with the resigned expression of a father who knew intervention would only encourage them. Mrs. Harding supervised the servants with solemn satisfaction while Barnes guarded the silver. Mrs. Pike, hired to assist cook for the day, carried trays of cakes and buns into the great hall. In the north gallery, the writing desk that had belonged to Marianne's mother stood beneath the tall window. Her books filled the shelves beside it, and her watercolour of the garden hung where the evening light could reach it. The chamber in the west wing had been lost, but everything it had preserved had found a place within the living house. Beyond the terrace, roses bloomed around the restored sundial. Its face had been cleared, its pedestal repaired, and the inscription stood fully visible beneath the summer sky. Time reveals what care preserves. Children ran past it trailing ribbons, too occupied with their game to notice the words. As dusk settled over the estate, lamps appeared behind the windows. Guests departed slowly, reluctant to let the day end. Several of the youngest guests were carried to their carriages half asleep, while abandoned coats and ribbons were gathered from the lawn. Marianne stood beside Edward beneath the portico as the final carriage disappeared along the avenue. The last light lay across the avenue and caught the gold of her wedding ring. Edward took her hand and raised it to his lips. For a moment, they remained at the entrance of the house they had chosen together. Then they crossed the threshold side by side. Charles's sons called to Marianne from somewhere near the library, and she went to find them. Edward closed the front door against the summer night. He stood beneath the lighted chandelier and listened. Voices drifted down the stairs, and china clinked in the dining parlour. Charles's voice sounded from somewhere near the library, and Marianne's answering laughter carried through the house. Edward smiled. Hawthorn still bore its scars. There would always be repairs to make, accounts to balance, and choices that could not be postponed. But its windows glowed against the gathering dark, and the sounds of life filled every room. Hawthorn Manor had found its voice. The end. And so, Hawthorn Manor is empty no longer, and Marianne has found not only a home of her own, but someone with whom to share it. If this story stayed with you, another romance is waiting. The fifth term begins with a broken engagement. 3 years after Lord Philip Thornton disappeared without a word, he walks back into Constance Fairfax's drawing room with an inheritance deadline and a proposal of marriage. Constance agrees, but only on 5 carefully negotiated terms. The fifth is the important one. Philip accepts them all, which is where the trouble begins. Tap the video on your screen to continue listening. I shall return soon with another romance, provided no one decides to repair the West Wing without consulting the steward.